Hello, folks, and thank you so much for joining me on what is probably going to be the most wild ride of a tangent you have ever seen. I'm not entirely sure exactly where this is going to go, all the ground it's going to cover. I just know that I am loaded for bear, and I am ready to just go off on something that I know is going to be incredibly offensive and controversial. That's not my desire. That's not what I want to do, and I'm going to try the best I can to keep it from straying into outright egregious, inflammatory rhetoric. But there are some things that I think need to be said, or questions that I think need to be asked. And that's more to the point. I don't want to necessarily be making a bunch of statements and saying this is what should and finger wagging, just asking questions for people to begin to process, because we're seeing a manifestation of a lot of things right now in our current time. For those of you who are watching this from the future, it's 2025. We're in a unique place right now where I think there's a lot of stuff that's being uncovered, a lot of things that are being made manifest. And I think it's allowing people to kind of give some thought, to scratch the chin a little bit and go, where did all this come from? Where did this start? Where are we now? And as the video, I think, I haven't figured out exactly what I'm going to name this video, but I'm pretty sure I'm calling it like the fallacy of empowerment or something like that. So we're going to start off there. Now, I do have some thoughts and where I'm going to go with this, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not entirely sure how we're going to get there, where it's going to go. I do have some different things already set up to show you, but we're probably going to have to do some searches impromptu. So I'm just going to let you know right now, chances are the heckles are going to go up at some point. And again, trust me, that is not what I want to do. I'm not trying to inflame. My hope is to just, if anything, just make you go, huh, okay. I'm not trying to tell you to like something, not to like something, to change your worldview. Just literally work with me here. Go on this journey with me if you have the time and inclination. And we're going to cover a lot of stuff. And it begins, at least, we're going to begin. My nose is itchy. With the fallacy of empowerment. Here is what the definition of empowerment is. We're going to start here. Authority or power given to someone to do something. Individuals are given empowerment to create their own dwelling. So legitimately giving somebody authority. I bequeath to you. This is me knighting somebody. Apparently that's what I went to. This is me bequeathing to you the power, the authority to do something on your own behest, or and the authority given to me, bestowed upon me by the state of whatever, or by this entity. You can do this. There's direct empowerment. I'm giving you power and authority by virtue of being an entity or construction of authority. The second one is the process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. The last part seems a little bit dated, but we're going to just go ahead and go with that one. The process of becoming stronger and more confident. Now here's that's feeling. That is a feeling. I'm going to take a little bit of issue with this definition here. I'm mostly okay with it, but notice it's stronger and more confident. These are subjective things. What exactly does stronger mean? More confident, it's a feeling. Just because you are more confident doesn't mean you are empowered. Doesn't mean you have any power. It means you're more confident, but confidence doesn't necessarily mean that you have something to back it up. You can be very confident in your foolishness. You can be confident in your ignorance. You can be confident in your weakness, and you're not going to find out how foolish your or poorly placed your confidence is until you hit a brick wall. So I'm going to say my definition is a little bit different than that, although it does tie into that a little bit. Here are the three essentials to empowerment. The three things you must have to be empowered. First of all, you must see someone, or you could say maybe a circumstance, but typically it's a person. You're going to see someone who is where you want to be. Now, let's do a quick quiz. Well, here's feasibly where you want to be, possibly where you want to be. So option one, I see somebody who's a millionaire. Can I feasibly or realistically be a millionaire? Realistically, yes. Feasibly, maybe not. But is it out of the realm of possibility that somebody my age with my just innate abilities or wherewithal that I could possibly become a millionaire? Has somebody been at my place financially at this age, about 44 years old? Has anybody been in that place and been able to become a millionaire? Yes, absolutely. Without winning the lottery, of course. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so that's a possible. Is it feasible? Maybe. It depends, but it is certainly possible. Okay, so that's good. Could I become a high-end athlete? Well, at 44, probably not. Probably not realistic. Rewind the clock. Could I have possibly been? Looking back objectively at my innate athletic abilities, I would have had to have busted my butt, and I might have been able to make second string, and we won't go any further than that. I'm not going to try to elevate myself. I have some athletic ability, but not enough to compete in the top echelons. If I went Rudy on it and I worked really, 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 really hard, maybe I could have overachieved and got to like a starting position at some level, but probably not. And certainly not beyond like a college level or something. I'm not an athlete. So not really realistic or feasible. So even if I see an athlete, and I did when I was younger, I would read biographies. I went into the library. We had these little thin biographies on Walter Payton, Joe Montana. I was a big football guy back then. Barry Sanders. Some of these guys that I really admired growing up, and I could read about them. And I could read about their work ethic. I could read about their path to how they got there, going through college, and like Walter Payton and how he used to run. There was a hill, I can't remember what its name, but he used to run that hill like every summer, up and down, just like crazy training. I read about Joe Montana, his Chicken Bowl flu game, for Notre Dame, where he led them, while having the flu. Same thing with Michael Jordan, his rise to greatness, and the story that everybody knows. He didn't make the freshman team, I think it was, or no, he didn't make the varsity team, but he made the JV team. I can't remember. It wasn't as bad as the story is, where it's like, oh, he didn't even make the team. It was like, I think he just didn't make a certain higher team. He wasn't starter or something. But I mean, granted, we know what he came, what he came to be. But anyway, you hear stories like that. I read stories like that, and they were, to a degree, empowering, because they talked about growing up with nothing. Most of these athletes had very little or came from just very basic middle-class homes. And they weren't necessarily superstars, but they played for their schools, and they got better, they got more noticed, that they were able to become starters in their high schools. They got drafted into college, and then college was able to put them in a place to be pros. So it wasn't exactly like a complete empowerment, but at least it gave me the idea that I could possibly be there. That at a younger age, it was still, again, I don't know about realistic, but it was still a possibility, something that I could be. Okay, so that counts as well. What about, I don't know, an alien from a foreign planet, from a foreign planet, an alien from another world, who comes here, and I have incredible superpowers, and I can kick butt, and I'm bulletproof, and I can fly. Is that realistic? No. Is that feasible? No. Is that in the realm of possibility in any way, shape, or form? Absolutely not. Therefore, can I be empowered by a fictional hero? No, it is not possible. But let's go beyond that. So first step is, I need to see somebody who I can realistically or feasibly follow in their shoes. They are where I want to be, and there is at least some possibility, some feasible way that I can get there. Next step is, I have to see them have common ground with me with where they started. If I want to become an actor, I'm not going to read a biography about this guy who grew up in Hollywood with his dad, who was a producer on Indiana Jones and Star Wars and half these blockbusters, and his mother's a casting agent. And I got into commercials when I was 2 years old, and my career went on from there. And it was just, I had to work hard, and go to auditions and everything. But it's fine. I'm not belittling that. You still have to put some work in theory anyway. But I'm not starting out from that place. I'm not even living in that area. So the idea that I could be empowered, I can say, look, yes, he's an actor, and I want to be an actor like that. And there are plenty of actors out there who have started off where I would have, in some Midwestern town, in some small podunk area, just doing basic theater, and then they did a comedy troupe. Bottom line is, there's many ways to get there, but I would not necessarily be empowered by a book or a story written by a guy who Hollywood had all those connections, had all those things, because I'm not starting off from that common ground. It doesn't really do me any good, because you're already starting with assets that I don't have. So realistically, you're not going to be able to show me a path to where I need to go, because your starting point is too dissimilar from mine. The third thing, and that leads to the third point, third thing you need to be empowered is how to get from point A to point B. It doesn't do any good for me to go, wow, he's way up there, he's awesome, that's exactly where I want to be. And oh my gosh, he started off small, and then he just goes, and you can do it too. If you just put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. That's not empowerment, because you haven't given me anything to empower me. You've literally given me something, maybe inspiration. There's something I could aspire to, something I can aim for. You've given me a target at least, but I don't even know how to aim for it. And I can say, okay, yeah, well, I can see where you're standing, and I can stand there and aim to try to get there as well, but I'm not empowered. I'm maybe somehow encouraged, but maybe inspired again. I want to be there. But what I need to be empowered is a path forward. I need to know, you need to put down, okay, here's where I went. Here are the obstacles that I faced. Here were the pitfalls that I had to skirt around. Here were the things that I had to rise up over, or the things that really set me back initially, that hopefully you can avoid doing those things. Here's the path that I took. Here are the things that I had to sacrifice to get there. Here are the decisions I had to make. That's why, is it Dave Ramsey, I think his name is? I've never listened to the guy, to be honest, but I know I have several friends who have. And why he is popular is he empowers you. He tells you what to do. Here's how you take, I'm debt free. I used to have debt. Here's how I went from being in debt to debt free. This is the steps. What is it? Start off by tackling the smallest debt first. I think you you eliminate all the little debts until you have the one remaining big debt. I think that's one of the steps. But like, that's empowerment. It's giving you the ability, giving you the knowledge, giving you the understanding, the mindset, the warnings, the encouragement. Because I mean, how many times, so much of it is, you know, when I was starting off as a writer, like, I mean, Tolkien, like, I'm not inspired by Legolas. I'm not empowered by Legolas. I'm not empowered by Frodo or Gimli. Like, those are not empowering to me. Although you could say, I mean, to a degree, like, there are very mortal endeavors, like Frodo, pretty much just persevering and just sticking out and going, I just got to do what I got to do. I wouldn't call that inspirational. I wouldn't necessarily even call that really empowering. But what is empowering is reading Tolkien's letters from Tolkien, because in those they talk about the publishing woes. They talk about him, the drafts, the number of drafts he wrote, like handwritten drafts. Write a draft, write another one. This isn't just going into Word and backspace and everything. I think eventually he did get somebody on there to help him with the actually typing it out. He would dictate, or they would translate the stuff, or convert it from his written to his to typed out. But the bottom line is, like, he talks about, and it's not meant to be that. It's not meant to be empowering, but just going from an unpublished writer. Now, I think before Lord of the Rings, he published The Hobbit, and he had published like some smaller children's works, I think, or at least had written some smaller books that had gotten in circulation. But in terms of publishing something this size, but it talks about, I mean, Aragorn. Initially, Aragorn was a hobbit with 2 wooden legs. That's how Aragorn started. He was a wooden-legged hobbit. That in the first initial drafts, that's what Aragorn was, and eventually he became this, closet cloaked king of Gondor type guy. So but it talks about all that. It talks about the going back and forth with the publishers and the rights and people wanting to change certain things and him having to stick to his guns. So even though it's not necessarily empowering, it's not written to be an empowerment, just seeing what he had to go through and going, okay, as a writer, I may have to go through those things. As somebody who's trying to get published, these are the things I need to be prepared for, and the stands I need to be prepared to willing to make, understanding that in order to get something published, they may ask me to sacrifice a chunk of the work, the heart of the work, or a piece of it. Am I willing to do that? You need to know that going in, because it could be something that you're faced with. And more to the point, I would say, not necessarily the Tolkien book, but like reading books written by authors who say, yeah, I remember staring at a blank page for like 3 weeks. I sat down to write, and I couldn't get myself to do it. I just could not get motivated. That is empowering to a degree, because I'm understanding, okay, you were where I was at. You are now a published writer, successfully moving in that. How did you get that? How did you overcome the writer's block? Did you have writer's block? Yes, I did. Yes, I had to overcome that. If you didn't, well, you still may be empowering in terms of like your lessons and how you forced yourself to write, or how you were able to condition yourself or discipline yourself. But there is even a degree to going, okay, I had these hurdles, and here's how I overcame them. If you don't have the hurdles, you really can't tell me how to overcome them. So telling me how you overcame your hurdles, that is empowering. You're giving me, again, the idea is you're equipping me, not with feelings. You're not making me feel confident. You're not making me feel strong. Again, those are subjective things. Strong compared to what? How am I getting stronger? That is an empty word. And so many times I've come to loathe that word, because it in most cases, it has very little meaning, and it has to be prefaced or bookended by a bunch of context in order to prove that, okay, I am strong now, or stronger. Does strong mean that you never make any mistakes, or does strong mean that you learn from those mistakes, through your weakness? And in which case, at some point you are weak, but are you strong at the time, or do you become strong because it's a bunch of nonsense. So the idea that, oh, well, this is empowering because it makes me feel stronger, it makes me feel confident, that's crap. That's not actually empowerment. It's not actually functionally doing anything for you. It's giving you a delusion. And that is why I call it the delusion of empowerment. Particularly because the tendency today, in these days right now, is to call something from a fantasy story empowering. And I've made this comment in YouTube videos, and in the few comments that actually stick, because I don't know, many of you have probably experienced this as well. Either you refresh the page and your comment is gone, or you refresh the page and your comment is there, but somebody replies in the comment thread and you go to check on it and your comment's no longer there, and nobody's responded to your comment. Or you make a comment very early on, and it's nothing, inflammatory or derogatory or anything. It's just a flat out comment. Maybe it has a little bit of insight that you think, and 0 likes. Nobody seems to have liked it, or as far as you can tell, dislike it. But a bunch of other comments that are much more inane have like 300 likes. And I'm not saying that, oh, well, it's my comment, I should get likes. I'm just saying, when you see it time and time again, you go, okay, are people actually seeing this comment, or is it just me seeing this comment? And if it is being seen, like, why can't I see it? Why is it now gone from the thread? Why aren't people responding to it? Why can't I see it? Why can't I refer to it? And then you hear the people having the same situation and them giving their reasons. Bottom line is, I've made comments similar to this and they've been wiped out. They're gone. But the point is you cannot be empowered. So I will make that point. You cannot be empowered by fantasy, because empowerment, again, is somebody who you can realistically become. In fantasy, Superman is not somebody that I can become. Spider-Man is not somebody that I become. In reality, if I get bitten by a poisonous spider, if I get bitten by a radioactive spider, I'm probably dead. I'm probably in a great deal of pain. I think they even did a series. It was like the realistic consequences of what happened, like going through gamma radiation for the Fantastic Four or the Hulk, Bruce Banner, like what actually would be this like grotesque deformed mutation. You get hit by gamma rays radiation, you're probably in a lot of pain. You're probably going to die. To a degree, there may be some gamma radiation that doesn't kill you. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but gamma radiation in general, not typically a good thing. Radioactive spider, probably not a good thing. Not going to give you powers. You don't get shot and become Lead Man. What's another one? Mutations, for as much as mutations do happen, they're typically to a deficit. They don't actually help you. They're kind of counterproductive. They're not making you a hero. So we are not empowered by fantasy. I'm never going to become one of them, because none of these things that make these heroes actually are real. I can become a strong guy who can stand up for what's right. I can kind of do that. Am I going to be able to defy bullets? No. Even like the closest you can kind of get is a martial artist. And even then, the martial artists that I've taken have said, if there's a guy with a knife, you run. If you can run, you run. Do not try to fight somebody with a knife. Sure as heck, don't try to fight somebody with a gun. And then they teach you ways, close combat stuff that you can do to combat somebody with a knife, not so much a gun, and you do know, like, okay, if they're like, I think it's 14 feet away or less, if the gun is holstered or if it's not out, you can close that distance in enough time. Maybe you factor that in, but in general, you don't want to be trying to use your martial arts against knives and guns or multiple opponents. Especially if you're doing jujitsu, because that puts you on the ground, you're pretty much cooked. So, even if you know martial arts, which is the closest thing you can kind of be to a superhero, even then, you're not going to be able to do anything that these other heroes do. And Batman, I'm sorry, guys like Batman, Daredevil, that are supposed to be just normal guys Daredevil has augmented senses or whatever, but Batman is supposed to be a normal guy. Oh, he just has a lot of money. Well, first of all, how many of us are going to be billionaires? Could I become a millionaire? Possibly. Am I going to become a billionaire? Probably not. Am I going to have a trauma that is so devastating to me and so life-changing that is going to compel me to spend my nights trying to fight crime in the way that Batman does? Probably not. Very, 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 very unlikely. Am I going to have the plot armor of Batman and be able to do all the crazy stuff that he does as a peak physical athlete and yet be able to still fight crime and still consume the amount of calories I need to do that? No, that is not realistic. It's not feasible. I'm never going to be there. That is not something to aspire to. It's not something that I can possibly become. I cannot be empowered by that, no matter what you do, no matter where you tell me they start off. And that's the other thing too. Bruce Wayne starts off as a billionaire heir to an empire, essentially. Superman starts off as a son of Krypton, as an alien who is empowered by our sun. There's all these different origin stories do not reflect where we are, and nor do they reflect where we can go. So they are disqualified. Because obviously if point A and B do not exist, then the whole path to get there doesn't exist either. And that is the crucial point. That is the really essential part of empowerment, is being able to be shown, given the knowledge, and be equipped to be able to get from point A to point B. Because essentially, typically you don't really know how to get there. You can say, man, I'd really like to be there. I'd really like to be that person. I'd really like to be able to do this. And you go, okay, how? Well, the best thing to do is to find somebody who's done it, and even better, find somebody who's done it and started off from a similar situation as you. So the idea that we can be empowered by fiction is itself a fiction. It's a fantasy. And here's an example. This is tragic. There's nothing to make fun of here. This is from 1979, so right after the Superman movie came out. A 4-year-old Brooklyn boy who fell from a 7th floor window on February 2nd, apparently while trying to fly like Superman, died of his injuries early yesterday at Kings County Hospital. A few days before, his father had taken him to see the movie Superman, based on the adventures of the comic strip character. Jack Fortmeyer, a fireman who witnessed the incident, said the boy's mother told him that since seeing the movie, Charles had been jumping off tables and chairs in the family's apartment in an effort to fly like Superman. The boy had climbed out of the window of his grandmother's apartment. So that is the unfortunate reality of empowerment by fantasy characters. That is what empowerment looks like. Oh, I can do that. I can be that. I can do this. And that unfortunately is a very tragic result of that. So there's a misconception, I think, I got to believe, because we hear the typical phrasing that we hear is female empowerment. And I remember seeing an article, I'm not going to bring it up here, but it was an article like why Wonder Woman is an icon and why women need her right now. And it's like, no, it's like, and talk about female empowerment. I'm sorry, women, you are not going to be Wonder Woman. You are going to be nothing like her. There's nothing about her that you actually are gravitating towards, anything that you're admiring, that you are going to be able to become. Just like men aren't. But men are not empowered by superheroes. We've never been empowered by superheroes, aside from tragic instances like that. And I'll admit, I actually, as a youngster, I had Superman pajamas and a Superman Velcro cape that only came down to about my mid back. So, I mean, they were pajamas. They weren't meant to be a superhero thing, but I put them on under my clothes. I remember it was a peach polo shirt, my jeans, my shoes, and I ran out behind behind the house. There was a little green electric box. I crouched behind it, and I doing the Superman theme, taking off the shirt, taking all the stuff, putting a little bag off to the side there, and I flew into action to patrol the neighborhood. And soon came upon 3 youths of dubious nature. They were middle school, I think, like really early middle school. I was probably 5, I want to say 4 or 5 at the time, and they were 6 or 7, maybe 8 years old. And, of course, I'm doing the whole Superman thing. And I mean, I'm not under any delusions. I'm not, trying to hit them with my X-ray vision or whatever. But, I'm a kid running around in essentially glorified pajamas. And so what do? Well, they take my very removable Velcro cape off and start playing keep away. And so now Superman is having to run around trying to get his cape back. They eventually throw it. It almost goes down. You have these sewers. We have the manhole on top, and then it has like this drainage slot there. Right on the very edge, almost goes into the sewer, and they just laugh and walk off. Typical, like, this is a scene out of a cookie cutter Hollywood movie, typical bullies, little kid, whatever. And I reach down, I grip my cape, I go back. Superman never patrols my neighborhood again. So I certainly was my imagination was inspired. My imagination was just percolated by Superman and Spider-Man, all those childhood superheroes. But again, I wasn't doing that with the illusion that I didn't confront them to fight them. I was kind of like, oh crap. But they already kind of saw me, and I wanted to go down to the creek, and they were right in front of the creek. So try to get by them, and they talked to me, at first, that's the way they always get you. They talk to you as if you think initially they're interested, like, well, oh man, that's cool cape. Where'd you get that? Or something like that. And so you think, oh, maybe they just want to talk. And then that's how they get you. They lull you in there. So I wasn't even under the delusion that I was empowered and that I was Superman. And I still got my butt kicked in a manner of speaking, and had to learn from that mistake. You don't go running around dressed as a superhero if you're not a superhero. But even there, that's not empowerment, but that is, again, it's not the delusion, but it is still kind of tiptoeing close to that. It's like that doesn't mix with the real world very well. So men, no, it is not empowerment. Now, when I say I'm going to make a bunch of statements here that are going to, again, like I said, probably raise some heckles. But remember, when I do this, understanding there is a bell curve, understanding that there is the vast majority of people, men and women, and then there are on the outsides people that are exceptions to the rule, people that don't quite fit into that. And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't other them. You can be acknowledged as an outlier and say, yeah, I'm kind of an outlier in this. I mean, I am. As a guy who likes romantic comedies, or historically who liked romantic comedies, 27 Dresses, Jerry Maguire, although Jerry Maguire you could say is also kind of a dude's version of a romantic comedy, but Sleepless in Seattle, not so much. You've Got Mail, how many other ones? Notting Hill. I mean, there's plenty. Like I liked rom-coms. I like K-dramas, and I don't watch either of them very much anymore, but I understand as a guy on the bell curve, I'm an outlier. Most guys don't dig on rom-coms. They don't dig on K-dramas. I try to talk to my guy friends about it. They're like, okay, man. Yeah, cool. No, that sounds really interesting. And I learned I'm not going to talk with my guy friends about it because whatever. That doesn't mean I'm less of a man. It doesn't mean I'm crazy. It doesn't mean I'm weird. It doesn't mean I'm, And just because they don't want to talk about it with me doesn't mean that I'm some kind of freak. It just means that I am statistically an outlier as a guy who enjoys those kinds of films, or had enjoyed those it kind of comes and goes. If I get, wax melancholy, it's like, you listen to the emo songs or whatever, and you watch stuff like that. No, true love. And again, hey, maybe that doesn't make me a manly man, but that's okay. I don't care. To me, it doesn't impact me. I don't look at that and go, oh, I'm not a man. I don't lose my confidence as a man. I'm saying all this to say that when I say men or women in a general sense, I'm not saying every single person, and that if you don't fit into this, then you're a weirdo. It just means you may be an outlier like me, and that's okay. So men, as a rule, are not empowered by superheroes. The reason why we like superheroes is because men are wired to protect and provide. Those are our big things. And I can speak for myself in that. That is something that speaks to me as a man. There is a desire to protect, a desire to be needed or looked to do that, and a desire to provide. And a superhero nails that desire to protect. That is the uber protector. That is the ultimate version of a protector, not only able to protect himself, protect friends, protect the world, for crying out loud. We're talking about a guy who can go, fly anywhere, get to pretty much anywhere, and he can protect anybody. He is capable of protecting, and all those bullies, all those people that we really start to wonder, can we protect ourselves against them? This is the embodiment of somebody who could even protect against the bully, who could protect against that guy that just scares the heck out of you. They can stand up to them. Now, again, very fine line here going, okay, just because Superman can do it doesn't mean that I can do it, but it's something to, in a way, it is an aspiration. I want to protect. I want to be that guy that is there to save the day. I want to protect the weak. And so that is where that comes from. Now, there are certainly guys that have a power trip about it, or power fantasies, but as a child, as a young person reading comics and watching the TV shows and movies, it wasn't empowerment. It wasn't, oh man, look how awesome that is. I want to punch those guys. It was, this is what I want to be. This is that innate desire to protect. This is the manifestation of that. And it resonates on a profound level. And so we're going to just go right off the deep end here. So the question then becomes, what about female heroes? What about heroines? Because I'm going to say this, and this is controversial, I understand. Men fundamentally different than women in every way, shape, and form. We are different as individuals, men and women, very, very different. The age-old adage, men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I think that was a book, in fact, and I'm not basing it on that, but I'm just saying, it's been known for a while. Very different in the way we approach problem solving, the way we communicate, in the way that we interact, in terms of our goals or pursuits, what actually resonates with us. I actually, for a brief time, at different moments, I would call them moments of weakness, I tried the online dating thing. And it talks about what do you care about? And I'll tell you, the one thing I always cared about, was she a smoker? Not interested in a smoker, casually even, no smoking. Ugh, it's disgusting to me. So that was always something, you could rate them how important is this? Very important, not a smoker. The least important stuff, especially if you're in that mindset, you're going, I'm looking for true love. The last two things I'm going to care about, what her education is and what her income is. Because again, I'm looking at myself as a provider. There's nothing enticing, there's nothing alluring, there's nothing remotely attractive about a woman who can provide for me. That doesn't mean that she can't, doesn't mean she can't have a job, doesn't mean that she shouldn't have a career. It simply means that as a man, that doesn't mean jack diddly squat. And it's not a turnoff, but it's not something that makes me go, oh, hey, this could really work out. I'm glad this gal can really make money. Or in education. And that also, that's a double-edged sword. That's all, well, not double-edged sword. That's not just women. That's just in general. I have very little overall respect for the education system, even the one that I went through, but particularly the one now. So to me, education does not mean intelligence. Education does not mean knowledge. Education means a certain kind of knowledge, certain kind of filters, processes a certain way. And in order, as somebody who has gone through college, I can tell you, you show up to class, you regurgitate the information you're told, you get good grades, you get a degree, you got your diploma, kudos. But that doesn't actually make you in any way, shape, or form a better person. In fact, I would say most of the time, the insular bubble that is the college experience is probably more of a detriment than anything. But setting that aside, I don't care. If we have a conversation and she's dumber than a doornail, that can happen whether she went to a university or not. I'm not going to discount or disqualify a gal because she doesn't have a degree. If we talk and we're having a great conversation, I couldn't care less. That's what it comes down to. And that's what the dating is. In theory, it's for, to understand that, to learn that about the person. Can we carry on a conversation? Do we resonate? Do we connect on different levels? And I don't think you need a degree in order to do that. And I don't think you need a high paying job in order to do that. In fact, something that, well, actually it wouldn't matter. I was going to say either way, you have to work hard. So it doesn't matter. But my point is, as a guy, don't give a rat's patoot about provision. Women, on the other hand, for the most part, that is actually something they care about. Women do look to see how much is he making. Now you've got the extremes. There's a healthy, so you understand, if a guy's prerogative, a guy's desire is to provide and protect, then naturally, on the woman's side, there is a desire to feel protected, a desire to feel cherished, and a desire to be provided for. That they kind of would go hand in hand. And again, it may not be, it could be, I personally, I believe that is, if you don't fall into that as a gal, that's totally fine, but you're probably on the outlier. And I could be completely wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong. And most women have no desire to be provided for, no desire to be protected. They can do it all themselves, and it's totally fine. Now, obviously there's that middle ground where you have, independent, where it's like, look, I don't need, and that's the other thing too. It's not, guys, when we want to provide, it's not that we provide because you can't. We don't try to protect because you can't. Although I would say, as we're going to go on this, yes, men are designed. We are built to protect. Doesn't mean all of us are. Doesn't mean there aren't bigger guys out there. There's always a bigger fish. But compared to women, we are. That is how we are built. Everything genetically, in our physique, everything is there to give us a physical advantage to protect. And the reason for that is because we're protecting something very important. We're protecting someone very important. And typically we're protecting not only our spouse, our loved one, a wife, but also the mother of our children. Like you are protecting our future. I am protecting our future, and my partner in that, who is directly responsible, the only one that possibly can provide that. And so if she is going to be debilitated, she's going to be going through all the hell that comes with being pregnant. She needs to be protected. And so, yes, there is at some point, yes, you need to be protected. I would say protection in general. And I don't want to go too far off the beaten trail here, but we're looking at a lot of stuff in modern day where it's like, where are the men? Why aren't the men protecting the women? Well, because we've been told that we don't need you. We're just as good. There is no difference between men and women. We're all the same. We're all just kind of one big mushy lump. And female empowerment. Look, we've got Wonder Woman. We've got, we've got Supergirl. We've got all these female heroes that are empowering us women, that are making us feel strong and confident, until we actually have to execute, and then it's not there. You see the videos of, and I have a friend who from college, 3 of them actually, who all went into law enforcement. One of them was a gal. She was a captain of the soccer team, very athletic gal, and I think she's done very well in her career there. So I'm not saying women can't be police officers, they shouldn't be in that, but I do think there are those qualifications that need to be met, and for very good reason. But overall, the desire or the ability to execute, the ability to protect is typically for men. So there's nothing against women trying to do that, but more often than not, I'm looking to a guy. If I'm looking for protection, I don't care where it comes from. Honestly, if a woman saves my life, gets me out of a jam, overpowers a guy who's kicking my butt, or just shoots him, does whatever, I'm totally fine with that. I'm not going to be like, oh, I'm emasculated, I'm timid. Oh my gosh, I was, rescued by a woman. There's no shame there. I'll take the help, whatever help I can get. But typically, it is the men that are designed for that. And getting back to the point, it is our desire, it is our privilege to a degree to be able to protect, to be able to provide. It's something that we enjoy doing, and we don't do it because you're weak and you're pathetic. We don't see women that way. Women, and again, when I say we, I'm talking that bell curve here. Most men, we cherish women. We love you. Oh, and again, I'm not trying to say, in a big, overall sense, but that is the deal. Like, if I'm looking at a woman, I don't say, oh, look at that poor, pathetic, weak damsel who needs a man to protect and provide. She can't possibly do it herself. Can I do certain things better? I mean, there are certain jobs that she's going to be able to do better than I can. So it's not a universal thing, but in terms of protection, yeah, I'm probably going to be able to do better. Now, guns are an equalizer, of course. You don't have to have a lot of force to pull the trigger. But even then, I would say overall, men still have an advantage in that area. And again, that could be outdated or what have you. You can say so, but that's where I'm coming from on this. But again, it's not because it's not an arrogance, it's not a pride thing. It's like, this is what I'm meant to do. Why wouldn't I do it? But men have been told, that's toxic masculinity. Going around having that confidence, having that willingness to step in and say, hey, no, knock it off. The willingness to get into an altercation at the right time. Now, we were going to hopefully, I think, somewhere loop this around into needlessly getting into altercations, and that's going to tie into Superman 2 in particular. Worst Superman movie ever. Yeah, it's worse than Superman 4. I'm going to tell you right now. But because nobody wins a fight. But these are the desire is there, and you can almost say it's selfish to a degree. But that's how little it has to do with like looking down at. It's more like you were treasured, you were cherished, and I want to protect you. And I want to provide. I want you to look to me as a provider. And as I was going to say before I derailed myself on that, there is you can have a warping of that. So you do have women that are gold diggers, women that want to be provided for. They just want to sit back and do nothing and just have the guy provide everything for them. And, you know, it's manipulative and it's selfish and it's greedy and it's not good. And that screws up the paradigm as well. And then you've got guys that try to lord over the women and they say, hey, woman, you're going to do what I tell you to do. And I'm, you know, ruler over here and blah, 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 and whatever else. Or they do the inverse of the protection. They actually are abusive. And that's kind of the worst. And I'm not saying like overall in terms of, you know, the world's evils, but the inversion of what the natural order is for a man to protect a woman, for a man to assault, for a man to harm a woman, is such a perversion of what it's supposed to be that it really does. That's why it hurts much to see even if a woman's going off on a guy and he's doing it in self-defense, even, it still is hard to watch because as a guy, you're going, no, like the innate, the natural desire is to protect the woman, not to harm her. So for a guy to do that, there's something really broken right there. And again, understand it, but that's where we're at in modern times now, you know, you know, in the world of Amber Heards and those kind of people. You want to act like an animal. You want to start hitting guys. Like there is a whole, you know, the concept of, you know, women and children first. Why? Because you're cherished, because you're prioritized. We want you to survive. We need you to survive. We'll handle what we got to do. We'll do what we got to do. We may not survive, but it's important to us that you survive. You know, the whole idea, the reason why it was atrocious historically for when you list off, well, there were 50 male casualties, but there were also women and children. The reason why that's added, the reason why that's a gut punch is because historically they were innocent. They were harmless. They were there. They were the ones going like, just they didn't have the wherewithal to maybe try to protect themselves, but not even that. They were the defenseless. They were the harmless. And so to talk about how they were killed, that is the encroachment on innocence, and women were included in that. But when you start weaponizing women, when you start having women going into combat situations, when you have women start to have the training and everything else, and I'm not saying that having self-defense is wrong, but I'm saying once you see women that are actually striking men, that are actually attacking men, I mean, a woman comes at you with a cast iron skillet. If she connects with that, she's going to crack your skull. Like there is a very real danger in there. You can certainly be harmed. Men are not impervious to that. We're not indestructible. Again, we're not Superman. So when you start saying, oh, women, you know, empowerment, that kind of takes away that whole innocent thing and the weak and needing protection. And again, I'm not saying women don't defend yourself. Don't learn how to defend yourself. That's very important in this day and age, particularly that you do that. My point more is going towards when you see like videos of actually like women scratching at the guys, you know, or clawing at them or throwing stuff at them. There does come a point where you go, okay, you know what? Maybe you're not crippling me with this, but it does hurt. And it is very irksome. It's very disrespectful. And yeah, no, you start doing something, you start reaching for something where you could actually hurt me. You grab a knife or something, you're just about as capable of plunging that into me as anybody else. It may not have all the power that it would have from a guy, but it can still do some stuff. Now we've gone off on a dark tangent here, but I mean, where did we get off on this tangent from? Circling back around. Oh, the idea of men desiring to protect. But when you have that women going, I don't need a man, it's like, okay, fine. But not only that, but we have that paired with the emasculation of men. Men being men, having that desire to protect, which again, I have a phrase, and I think C.S. Lewis is the one who kind of quoted part of this, or not quoted part of this, but came up with part of this. I think he's the one. I couldn't find the actual quote though, but it's any virtue any virtue in excess is a liability. Any virtue misplaced is a vice. So if you have compassion, if you are compassionate, just you can be compassionate to a fault. Compassion is a great thing, but if you can have so much compassion that you allow yourself to be abused, you allow people to take advantage of you, or you allow people to get away with things that they shouldn't get away with, and all you're doing is reinforcing and enabling that behavior. So compassion taken to excess, a virtue taken to excess, is a liability. It can be a harm to you and a harm to others. Compassion misplaced is a vice. Compassion. Well, I feel so bad for the serial killer because, you know, he didn't have all the stuff he wanted to have growing up. Or, you put your compassion with criminals, with violent people, with wicked people because, you just assume they had it rough or whatever, what have you. That is misplaced compassion. That is a vice. That is a problem to give compassion to people who are outright trying to eviscerate and slaughter people. Like that's just it's not a great place to put your compassion. So it can be taken to excess, and it can be bastardized. And that goes for, as I was saying, men in their protection and women in terms of, in terms of what they're looking for. They can be very predatory in that regard, and they can take it to excess. And same thing with, I guess that would be that would be it. Any virtue, anything that is good for a man to do. Because we're talking about like men. So yes, there is the hyper aggressive. There is the looking for a fight. There it could be, but usually that's not just a result of masculinity. That's not just I'm a man. That's usually a kid has been abused by his own father. There's multiple other things going on for a guy to become overly aggressive, for that bullying behavior. There's something else at play there. There's something that is perverting and twisting that overall just desire. Like competition, very natural for guys. Like I said, the desire to protect, to defend. And a lot of sports are that you have attackers, defenders, like there's a lot of things in competitive play that tap into what men desire to do. And yes, we have plenty of women who play sports. And again, I'm not saying, we shouldn't have women's sports or anything. You should be able to have the freedom to pursue whatever you want to pursue. But at this point, I think it's not controversial. I hope it's not controversial to say that men just do it better. That's why men don't compete with women, because an amazing woman who, is amazing in a sport is compared to a guy of the same experience or the same level of professionalism. There's going to be no contest. And that's not a lord it over and, we look down and go, you pathetic creature. It's like, no, you're living your dream. You're doing what you want to do, but your men are wired to do that. And you aren't necessarily. Like, you can say, I'm not saying that if you believe that or if you feel that's not innate to you, that you got it from somewhere. You just go, no, this is something that I enjoy doing. And there doesn't have to be anything wrong or nefarious to that. But it does say, bell curve, you're going to have more men competing in things, in competition, because that is part of what we, that goes kind of hand in hand with what we do. Now you can take that into excess. And I'll tell you honestly, I'm not a very competitive person. If I'm playing basketball with a guy who's going like hardcore and like throwing elbows and doing all this stuff because he's desperate to win, I'm like, look, I'm going to let you have it. I'm not going to like just back off, but I'm not going to go like crazy with it, because it's like, clearly you need this win. Like, or you're just a hyper competitive person. I want to play, I want to get better, but I'm not going to start trying to injure people. I'm not going to like, start trying to play on some kind of professional level where I'm trying to, do things that are technically not fouls, but they're actually kind of fouls. Like, I just, clip out your legs from underneath you. Like, I don't care to win that much. And I'm not saying that guys that do that are necessarily wrong, but my point being that anything that is innate for a man or a woman, any quality, any virtue, whatever it is that is meant for good, that is meant to be protective, that is meant to be productive, can be taken to excess, and it can be misplaced. And in both those cases, it causes problems, both for the man and for who he's competing against, or the woman, men, vice versa, what have you. So anyway, I don't know why I delved off into that right off the jump. But there's a difference between men and women. So getting back to that core principle, difference between men and women. So if men are wired to protect and to provide, which is a secondary thing when you're talking about superheroes for the most part, does it make sense that women also have a desire to protect and provide? On the whole, I would say no. I would say most women want to be protected. They want to know that they are worth protecting. And I talked about this in the Snow White video, that there's a desire for men. Men are wired to be able to pursue and to not be deterred. Not necessarily, and again, this is taken to excess, not to ignore with the woman's going, no, I'm not interested. It's not supposed to be for the guy to go, well, no, I know I'm a guy and this is how I'm wired and I'm going to keep pursuing you. That's for the guy to step back and go, okay, no, if you're not interested, then it's off. That is the power. When we talk about like power dynamics, we're going to get into some of this in a little bit here. You talk about power dynamics between men and women. Men have the desire to pursue, and they are, I'm not going to say uniquely qualified, but they have that kind of that we have that hardened shell, typically that kind of like second skin. Now, not all guys, and trust me, getting rejected stings no matter what. It's not I'm a big man, I don't feel no pain. You reject me, it's going to sting. It definitely stings. But that, to have a girl go, no. And you can tell she's going no, because she's protecting herself and she's not really necessarily sure about you. She's trying to gauge it. She's very smart. There's a discernment there and going, okay, maybe there's some interest here, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to throw myself at you. And the guy's going, okay, I understand. You've kind of rebuffed me, not rejected, but rebuffed. Okay. Are you sure? And when you look at, and again, I know this comes into the rom-com background that I talked about, but which is a romanticized and an unrealistic version of it. But the idea that it's typically maybe they butt heads, or there's some kind of conflict or something, or the girl does say no. But again, we as an audience can tell, or she has this conversation with her best friend, and you realize, okay, she does kind of like him, but these are the obstacles in the way. These are the things she's not sure about, she doesn't like. But anyway, rebuffed. The guy goes, okay, I'm still going to gently pursue. But the girl can shut that down. And in a right society, a right way, the guy does have the prerogative of going, hey, I'm interested. And the woman can just go, I'm not. And it's done. At least it should be. For a guy to continue to push beyond that when she's genuinely going, no, we've encroached, we've crossed a line there. But for as much as a guy may want to pursue that, all it takes is a guy going, I'm not interested. And it's gone. There is... Because, I mean, for any right-thinking guy, there is no point, there is no desire to pursue a relationship with a girl who's not interested. You don't want to win her over, manipulate her, cajole her, threaten her, manipulate her, anything. And I think I said manipulate twice, to make her like you. Like, why would you want that? Who wants a life like that? So it's actually a very good thing if a woman is honest and says, no, I'm not interested. Guy, just take that as an understanding. Like, it's not going to work out. And even if you somehow make it work out, if you somehow, like, I mean, I don't know exactly what the truth of it is, whether there was love there or not, but I know I have relatives where, I heard about the story where it's like, he kept asking me to walk me to school. This is back in like the 50s and 60s. He asked me to, if he could walk me to school, and I'd say no. And eventually I said yes. And he kind of won me over. Now, I don't know how much of that was courting, how much of that was kind of her going, no, and him going, okay. And how much of it was her going, no, really, no. And he's going, oh, please. And she eventually caved. I don't know what the truth is behind that, but I would assume, knowing my granddad, I don't think that he was, aggressive on that level. That wasn't that's not the kind of person that he was. But in any case, the idea that a woman can shut it down, or should be able to shut it down, and a guy should appreciate that she's shutting it down, because you're wasting your time. Like, this is not something she's interested in doing. But going back to the point that I'm trying to make, I don't believe personally that women are there to protect men. Like, that's not a thing. I'm not looking to a woman protection. I don't want a woman to protect me. And that doesn't mean that I reject that. And as somebody who grew up with a stay-at-home mother who was a great mother, very, very ferocious in her own way, she got me out of, there were so many, like, well, not so many, but like in second grade, I had a teacher who absolutely hated my guts, and things really got bad. And my mom, she was on top of it, went in there and said, you take my son out of her class right now. Like, I mean, she was protective. She was protective. Dad was at work. Mom was protecting. More nurturing, but also had that protective vibe. But, as I got older, then I start taking over that protection. Like, there's less that she can do and more that comes on my shoulders that I need to do to be protected. So, and again, I don't resent being protected. Again, if there's a woman in law enforcement, whatever happens, somebody saves my life, there's not like an emasculated, oh my gosh, I was saved by a woman, I'm so embarrassed. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's awesome. Thank you. Congratulations. Greatly appreciated. No, don't feel bad about it all. When I was playing soccer, we played like a co-ed soccer. There were girls that could run circles around me. I was not very good at soccer. I was back in the day in middle school. I actually made my school team. It was the only time I actually tried out for a school team, something where you weren't obligated to get a position. Like, in league sports, if you pay X to get into the community league, and you're guaranteed to have a certain amount of play time, whether you suck or not, just because you paid money and you're part of the league there. But I actually tried out for a soccer team in 8th grade, and I made it. And I started the first 7 games, and then things got hyper competitive, and I kind of lost interest, and it went downhill from there. But why did I talk about that? She was, oh yeah. So, way back in the day, I was good at soccer. So anyway, we go in this co-ed league. It's like an indoor soccer league. And there are girls out there that are they're decimating me. I played indoor volleyball, and because where I grew up, we didn't have men's league for volleyball, indoors or outdoors. So it wasn't until college that I kind of learned from guys who did live in areas that had volleyball. But even then, you don't get the reps. You don't get the practice setting and spiking, all that kind of stuff. So I kind of got okay. Like, I was not a liability in most general games, but you start getting to higher levels, and there were girls that could kick my butt in serves. They could, the spikes and everything. I mean, maybe not so much spikes, especially when we played on guide nets, but I mean, they were very, very good. And they could hit serves that I would have a hard time returning. So, and I wasn't like, oh, I'm getting beat by a girl. It was just like, they're really freaking good. Like, I can appreciate that. And there's no shame in it. They just got very good. They're very athletic, very talented, and they had the time and the ability to practice and to train and to get the technique and form down. And you combine that with their athleticism, and they're actually very, very good. And there's no shame in that. And there's no harm in that. But in general, it is men protecting, and all of that to say, like, so I don't resent that, but I'm also not looking for that, and I don't necessarily want that. And I refer to this in the Snow White movie as well, that like Back to the Future. Now, Back to the Future is not a documentary. This is not real life. So I'm not saying, hey, it happened in this movie, so therefore this is a model. But we understand that there are two different George McFlys, sorry. Two different George McFlys. One who is rescued by her dad as a peeping Tom. Her dad hits him with the car. He's brought in, and she says, oh, he's like a lost puppy or a hurt puppy. And so her love that exists for George, Elaine, her love that exists for him is attached to pity. It is seen through the lens of pity. And we see that George going through his life pretty much emasculated, and we see him as this doofus loser guy who just really has nothing. And you see Elaine looking at him going, that's when I knew that I'd spend the rest of my life with him. Sorry for that burp there. The rest of my life with him. And so you can tell, okay, there's a love there, but she's not particularly keen on the man that he has become, because he's really a turd muffin. He's not much when you look at a guy. But you see the alternative reality in which George is forced to come to the aid of Elaine, and she sees him not, laying in bed, got hit by a car, peeping Tom with the binoculars. Through pity, she sees him holding out his hand, say, "Are you okay?" And she's looking at him as her protector, as, in that particular instance, a savior. Shouldn't be for life in general, but in that instance, as a savior. And so from a position of strength, and so for him, it's a validation because he's doing what his prerogative is as a man, and has been able to protect for this woman. And she is looking to him and going, he fought for me. Like, he was willing to fight, willing to put something on the line for me. And he fought for me, and to then see him now through the lens of as a protector and ultimately as a provider. And you see how that future plays out, and nobody's like, oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous or so whatever. But you see like how transformative that kind of thing can be. It's at least illustrated in principle, even if you don't necessarily believe that that's the truth. I think that is an indication of at least what I think the difference is. And I don't think that one incident is going to transform, have that ripple effect and make him an author or, all that kind of stuff. That's more of the cinematic and the Hollywood version of it, the movie magic. But I do believe that there is a huge difference for a guy who steps into a relationship from a position of strength. That doesn't mean that he's got to beat up somebody who's trying to assault his future wife. Like, that's not the ideal. Like, we men don't necessarily need to fight dragons or bullies or what have you. That's when a guy holds the door open for a gal, that's us. That's clearing the way. That's us, making a way for. That's removing an obstacle from the lady. I mean, that's our very tame and sedated version, modern man type thing. There aren't necessarily things for us to fight for or overcome. We take victory in the small things. Opening a door is the smallest way of saying, here, not because you can't open the door. It's here's a little bit of the way that I can kind of provide for. Here's a way I can, again, it's not protecting really, but I can't fight a dragon. I can't remove that from your life, but I can get this bothersome door out of your way, man. And so there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's not a chauvinistic. And hey, look, there are chauvinistic men. There are men that do look at women as inferior creatures, that they're pathetic and they can't possibly do anything. But most men don't look at women like that. It is done from a privilege, and not privilege in the way that has been bastardized in today's world. Oh, check your privilege. No, it's an honor to be able to have a woman who looks to you to provide, that provides that. And it's not stroking your ego either. That's just a natural thing. And that's where the misconception disconnect is for a lot of women. When they look at who, dating profiles, they're looking at how much does he make? What is his education? Because those things indicate his ability to provide. They're not guarantees of it, but they are indicative of his ability to provide. And even somebody who's not a gold digger is looking, going, I want to know that I'm taken care of. And so it makes sense. But this modern warping of that says, oh, well, women, that's what you value. That's what men value too. No. That's not what we want. So again, we're not looking for that. So here's the question. I know I've established a premise that you may not agree with, but if the majority of men have a desire to protect and the majority of women desire to be protected, we understand where superheroes come from. We understand that it comes from, that those are the again, not empowerment. There's no empowerment there. They're fantasy characters, but they embody the ideals and the core desire of young men, which is to grow and to become protectors and efficient protectors. So if you look at Joe Shuster is one of the creators of Superman. Superman was created back in, I believe the first publication was 1938 or 1937, 1938. First appeared, in 1938. So it's important to remember that date because we're going to talk about Wonder Woman. She comes soon thereafter. But there's really nothing here. It just says here, Schuster modeled the hero after Douglas Fairbanks, who is an actor, producer. So that's this fellow here. So not necessarily a superhero, but he did play the vigilante Zorro. So he's kind of was like what you could call kind of a superhero. Mark of Zorro, Robin Hood. I think he played the lead in those. Comedic actor early in his career, moved to adventure genre. Okay. Yeah. So again, not necessarily anything profound, just kind of an icon that they would have seen like as a kid in the silent movies and everything. And they talk about where he gets the name. Clark Kent is a combination of Clark Gable and Kent Taylor. So, very, very basic beginnings. You didn't really have to have a lot of imagination to say, hey, let's create a Superman. And I even have, I didn't pull it up, but even Superman's costume, the underwear on the outside, that's what strong men back in those times, that's what they wore. It was like they wore essentially just a pair of briefs. So, today it looks a little weird, but you actually had guys who were, strong men wearing leopard kind of loincloth things. And then you had pretty much the briefs and a pair of boots. And that was pretty much it. So you understand kind of the direct inspiration for a strong man just straight up comes from, there was no convoluting, no anything. It's just like, hey, strong guy can do cool stuff. And we're not going to get too much further into that, but I think seems like a very organic type of origin for a male superhero. Now, again, that's 1938. Now let's check out Wonder Woman's creation. Where it comes from. It's Marston, I believe is his name. That was his last name. Moulton. He had a pen name, but so he was polyamorous, I believe. So he had, I believe, 2 partners that he lived with, 2 gals that he lived with for most of his life. And it says here, 1940s DC Comics was dominated by superpowered endowed males, Green Lantern, Superman, and Batman. So you got 3. There wasn't a crap ton of male heroes. There were definitely some, but not a whole heck of a lot. And there was actually a heroine before Wonder Woman. I think her name was Panthera or something. Just she didn't have the staying power, so that's why we're going with Wonder Woman. Both of them, I believe, came out in 1941. But let's see. Here we go. And this is very kind of disturbing. So first of all, Marston said he saw a great educational potential in comic books. What have we been talking about for the past several years is agendas and ideologies in entertainment. They're not just there to entertain. They're not just there to tell. They're there to preach. They're there to teach you something. They're there to instruct you in some way. And maybe in the history, and this is a point that I've made, historically, right now, a lot of people are kind of recoiling from a lot of this stuff because it's very much in your face. There's no attempt to hide it. It's just unmasked. As I said, it was manifesting. It's out there in front of you and people are seeing it and going, oh my gosh, this ideology is kind of messed up. But that's only because they've abandoned subtlety. It's been here from the beginning, probably even before this, but there's undertones of this from the get-go. And so you've got the guy who created Wonder Woman is saying, great educational potential in comic books. I'm setting out to educate the kids, not just create a female hero for gals to go, yeah, hero. I'm going to educate guys. But he listen to what he wanted to educate guys on. He wanted to create, Marston remembered an idea for a new kind of superhero, one who would conquer not with fists or firepower, but with love. So, whatever. Fine, said one of the women he was living with, but make her a woman. So the dictate was from one of his, I believe that's one of his cohabitators. I don't know what else you'd call it there. But here we go. This is what he actually said. Not even girls want to be girls so long as our feminine archetype lacks force, strength, and power. Not wanting to be girls, they don't want to be tender, submissive, peace-loving, as good women are. Women's strong qualities have become despised because of their weakness. That's a lie. That is an outright lie, you sick turd muffin. Women's qualities have never been despised. Maybe by you, sir. And again, a feminist. So I'm not saying necessarily all feminists are bad or connected, but polygamist, feminist, women's strengths and qualities, their good qualities, have been despised. Now, again, submissiveness, not necessarily. Tenderness, yes. Peace-loving, yes. There are a lot of qualities, feminine qualities, that men are genuinely attracted to. And femininity, again, you, as a protector, you don't want to look at a girl and go, oh, well, she's a brick house. I don't need to protect her. She's got it. She's got it good. Obviously, you're going to be attracted to women who are who embody that a daintiness, a femininity that is a draw, both romantically or relationally, but also to that prerogative of a protection. So it's already a misunderstanding by this guy's part that women were despised by that. There may have been some women who were self-loathing or women who are like, well, I want to be strong too. I want to be powerful too. And they hated it. And I mean, it's saying right here, it's, oh, well, girls don't want to be girls. Bull crap. But today we're seeing the manifestation of that. We're seeing that played out where women are rejecting being women. And they're saying, oh, we want to be, they'll reject masculinity and call it toxic while also trying to embody those traits. It's jerky behavior for a guy to walk up and just, punch another guy. But the girl can do it as long as the guy showed some level of disrespect to her. What was it, Captain Marvel? Where the guy's like, hey, he makes some comment. It's not even like sexually aggressive. It's just a comment. And that justifies her going up and like crushing the guy's hand. And, I don't know that she beats the crap out of him, but it's like, that's empowerment. Ladies, sorry, you're not going to do that to a guy. You're not going to go up and crush a guy's hand. Most women are not going to even be able to approach a guy and do anything to him in general. That is not empowerment. That is deception. And that is not something that, the guys are like, oh, we despise, like, oh, we want our women to be that. We're going to get to that point very, very soon here at the end of this. But here, so we have this false pretense that women's qualities have become despised. I don't know who is despising it, but as a man, I don't despise female qualities. I'm all for female qualities. I'm not looking for a woman to embody masculine qualities, but he identifies them as women strong. Their strong qualities have been despised. He's identifying that there are qualities that belong to a woman. The obvious remedy is to create a feminine character with all the strength of Superman, plus all the allure of a good and beautiful woman. Those are not two compatible things. You are saying, I want all the traits that make a man what a man is, the protector, provider, has a competitive drive, has that ability to be proactive and to move forward on things and in a way to be, to a certain degree, aggressive, but also to be a woman and to be allure. Again, there's more about sex appeal, allure of a good and beautiful woman. So I want the power of Superman, but the power of a man and all the traits of a woman. That's not a concoction. That's not a thing. You don't get to have that. You have men and women who are different, and they both embody very different things. They both have their own strengths and their own weaknesses and the way they come together. If you want to reject the female strengths because you want your women to be punching guys, you want women to be protectors, that's your problem. That's a perversion. That's not something to aspire to. And here's, we'll get to another saying, another quote of his a little bit later. Let's see. Okay, his collection helps tell the backstory of Wonder Woman, including his unorthodox personal life with two idealistic and strong women. Again, what the heck strong means? Let's just Olive Byrne and Elizabeth Marston, in conjunction with Margaret Singer. All-female utopia of Amazons, blah, 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 blah. This is not the important part. I'm getting down to the quotes here. Where is it? No. Here we go. Yes. All right. Marston's philosophy of diametric opposites has bled into his design of the Wonder Woman mythology. Again, opposites. These are not embodied by a single person. These are two opposites. And the reason why I came across this is because I mentioned before, I'm working on a video that is my favorite, not only my favorite, but the best superhero ever. Like it's going to be an obnoxious video where I just say none of these other heroes measure up. This is the one and only hero, and there's no question, there's no discussion about this at all, and I'll tell you why. But in order to do that, I do go through some of the major superheroes and partly comedy and just ridiculousness and partly genuine, going, this is why they're not the best. This is why, and so I was doing Wonder Woman is listed among the top 10 on a lot of lists as one of the best heroes. And so I was like, let me do the research on it because I knew a lot about her. I knew there was some kinky stuff in the creator's backstory there, but I didn't know the full depth of it. And so in order to do research for this, I looked into it, and that's when I came across this. And so you have this, and my critique of Wonder Woman, just as a spoiler, my critique of Wonder Woman is she lacks integrity, and not in terms of morality or in terms of being, honesty. It's in terms of a wholeness, a singleness, a consistency of character, that she is all over the place. Her powers are all over the place. Her weaknesses are all over the place. Her personality are all over the place. And it goes back to the very roots of it, because she is divided. She's both man and woman combined into one. She still looks like a woman, but she behaves as a man. And be thinking about that. Okay, we're going to get to there. Woman, body of a woman, appearance of a woman, allure of a woman, but the power of a man. It's not a thing. That's a dichotomy. That as it says, diametric opposites. They're not supposed to be combined into a character. When the male characters came out, they're not, part man with the compassion of a woman. It's a man. Like, that's it, straight through and through. Wonder Woman is a hybrid. And when you have a hybrid, she's going to be divided. It's like, she wants peace and love, but she also punches and kicks and stabs. So it's like, well, what are you? Are you? Because it's, she's all about peace. Well, no, she does a heck of a lot of fighting. She does a lot of fighting in the name of peace. Never achieves peace, by the way, but does do a heck of a lot of fighting in combat, as heroes do. But yet she's supposed to be a woman, so she has the allure, but not the but also somehow the power. And I'm gonna touch on that momentarily as well. But let's finish with this guy. Oh my goodness gracious. So, masculine and feminine, dominance and submission. Marston's Wonder Woman is an early example of bondage themes that were entering popular culture in the 30s. These events. Okay. The only hope for peace, this is Marston quote, the only hope for peace is to teach people who are full of pep and unbound force to enjoy being bound. Only when control of self by others is more pleasant than the unbound assertion of self in human relationships can we hope for a stable, peaceful human society. Giving to others, being controlled by them, submitting to other people cannot possibly be enjoyable without a strong erotic element. So again, we have a contradiction here. He's like, she needs to be dominant. She needs to kick butt. She needs to do all these things. But she also needs to submit. And if you look at the earlier comics, she's getting tied up. And her earliest weakness was if she was tied by a man, or I think it was if her bracelets were bracelets of submission. She wore bracelets of submission. Her jewelry, part of her costume was called bracelets of submission. And they would be, if they were welded together by a man, not a woman, by a man, she would lose her strength and be completely helpless. But then she also has her lariat that is used to tie up guys and also compel the truth from them. And Marston has a history, part doing with the polygon. It was like a stress. He did work on part of the stress test, which is part of the polygon or something. He had a hand in it to a degree. Anyway, that's where I'm sure the lasso of truth comes from. One of the purposes of these bondage depictions was to induce eroticism in readers. These are children readers. And here we go. As what is called sex love training through his Wonder Woman comic team to condition readers to become conditioned readers. Remember, who are the readers of these comics? Are these adults? Most of the time, these are kids, especially back in the 30s. Like these are stories more or less for kids. He aimed to condition readers to become more readily accepting of loving submission to loving authorities rather than being so assertive with their destructive egos. About male readers, in particular, he wrote, give them an alluring woman stronger than themselves to submit to, and they'll be proud to become her willing slaves. There is nothing right with that statement. Proud, willing slaves? First of all, I think that's an oxymoron. Like, you a willing slave, you can be a willing servant or a willing partner, but if you are a slave, by definition, you are not. It is not a willful thing. Now, I know in BDSM and stuff like that, they do have master-slave dynamics, but the idea of being proud to be a slave to somebody, even in there, the dynamic is one of where I think they say like the submissive person technically has the power. Like you can only go as far as a dominant in as much as the submissive will go. So it's not pure slavery. Now, there are some who actually do get off on slavery, but I would say, again, we're talking bell curve. The people who want to be dominated or want to dominate, like actually aggressively to the point of master and slave, are on the outliers. But again, that statement, remind me about his male readers, give them an alluring, again, provocative, sexy, give them an alluring woman stronger than themselves to submit to. So we're not even talking about, it's not about parity, not about equality, not about fair partnerships. No. You're a beautiful woman and you're stronger than me. So I'm going to submit to you, and I'm proud to be your slave. Like, that kind of makes me throw up on my mouth a little bit, but it doesn't end there. Transformative justice, blah, 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 blah. Penal colony love alternatives, retribution of justice, blah, 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 blah. Do we have, where is, oh, yes. The Venus Girl was an allegory for Marston's theory of sex love training, where people can be trained to embrace submission through eroticism. So you have a guy who says, hey, comic books can be educational. I'm going to educate young men through eroticism, through bondage, which I believe is a segue into eroticism. Through bondage and eroticism, I'm going to teach them about submission and wanting to be a slave to a woman powerful than them. And he says, oh, there was one more quote that he had where he said, oh, crapola. I didn't say that. Should have said it. It's pretty much what he's full of. But it was essentially that this is the Wonder Woman essentially was his idea of the ideal woman to rule the world. Where come on, it has to be. Let me see. I think I can do it this way. Sorry. No, really? Okay, so it's there. No, crap. Okay, maybe I saw it in another article, but he said, oh no, that's the word propaganda. He actually used the word propaganda. Gotta love that, right? He said it. It's, I will not be shown up by this. All right, you know what? Google. Wonder Woman quote. This is vindication. Frankly, Wonder Woman is psychological propaganda for the new type of woman who should, I believe, rule the world. There we go. That's not where I found it from. I'll just magnify that for you. This isn't the site that I got that from. It's just, but that was a quote that I was looking for. I must have seen it on another article. A quote from him. Wonder Woman is psychological. Hey, knock that off. Propaganda for the new type of woman who should, I believe, rule the world. Marsden, it's a fantasy. That woman doesn't exist. You have created a woman that is a hybrid of a woman and a man in the most fantastical and distorted and perverse way possible. And you're saying that's your ideal woman, the one that you believe should rule the world. You understand that's a fantasy, a very sick, twisted fantasy. But that's what you consider to be the aspiration. And somehow, somewhere in his mind, seemingly he thinks that's a possibility. I don't know. Maybe that's putting a little too many words in his mouth. Maybe he's just saying, if dreams could come true, Wonder Woman would be one of many women who would rule the world. I don't know. But those are the roots of Wonder Woman. The first prime time female hero came out about 3 years after Superman was published. So it wasn't like I thought Superman was out for like a year or 10 years or something before Wonder Woman came along. Nope. Superman had been about for 3 years. And then you suddenly have this guy come up and go, oh, no. We need to create a female hero. And we're going to outright say that she is going to have masculine male characteristics because all the qualities of a woman are worthless. They don't mean jack diddly squat. So we're going to take that strength that then makes those other characteristics nice. But he didn't say the tenderness and all that kind of stuff. It's the allure of a woman. And so this gets down to the crux of the matter. One of the big things that I wanted to hit on. When you look at this, look at male superheroes. What do you see in all these heroes? Well, I know I'm scrolling kind of fast. Look at these heroes. What do you notice about all of them? They are buff. They are very, very strong. They're portrayed as very, very strong. They're shown having, all of them have this ridiculous physique that most guys could never equal. The very first Superman wasn't necessarily completely ginormous. If you see the original, he's kind of, he's more like Christopher Reeve's Superman. Not, he's got some muscle, but he's not like super ripped. But modern comics in particular, the guys are all chiseled, have this, this inverted triangle type figure. And why is that? Because that is the physical manifestation of the power and the strength that men want to have to protect. So this is what it looks like when you are powerful, when you have power, and not powerful like I can change the world, I can make people do what I want. That's a perversion of power. Power in terms of internally, like strength, capability. When you see a guy who looks like that, who's ripped like that, you go, that looks like a guy who can protect. That looks like a guy who can do what it is that men inherently want to do, to achieve, to be competitive, to be proactive, to explore, to conquer. It's like that is the physique that you need to have. So it's the embodiment of what men want to have. Now let's look at women, female superheroines. I've got some pulled up here, but we'll just look at this. I think is a very good picture of Wonder Woman, because if you notice, she's got a little more muscular definition than like almost like we've never seen, like Linda Carter, Gal Gadot. They don't have a physique of, they do have a physique like Wonder Woman in the 60s, 70s. Actually, so you had Wonder Woman in the 50s. Let's just take a look. Wonder Woman, 1945. She has like a girlish physique. If you look, like she is, it's you wouldn't necessarily call it a woman. She's not particularly buff or anything, but she's also not necessarily lithe. And I believe back at this point, she was 5'8". So she's not incredibly tall, but she is this, again, has kind of a what you call a girlish figure. Then you look at Wonder Woman 1980. I believe that's, can't remember that guy's name. Oh, that's 70s. That's Linda Carter. I mean, that's the one, but like see here, more, I want to say Barbie-esque, but a little more, again, feminine, the more model-esque. Like you went from, again, more of a girlish look, rounded and everything, to more of a model. But again, not there's really no muscle here. It's she's very lean. And so Linda Carter, aside from having dark brown hair instead of black hair, pretty much encapsulates what Wonder Woman looked like in the 80s, and even the 70s, probably even the 60s, if we want to go that far back. I'm not going to get too far into it. Well, comic, that's what we want to say, right? Comic. Yeah, so, I mean, you see her here. She's not, that's a bad picture, but she's not particularly big. She's again, very feminine, very alluring, if you will. And then you have her now, Wonder Woman. Comics, because again, Gal Gadot and Linda Carter have that. Look at this. This looks like a dude. These look like men. Like they have the physique of men, and a lot of men are going, "Hey, where's the allure? Well, why don't we have the allure?" Well, here's a wake up call for us, fellas. That is what a powerful woman would look like. She would be beefy. She would be chunky, because that is what it looks like to have power manifest. Even for women, when you see a bodybuilder woman, you see she looks like a very little, it becomes mostly muscle here. The giant shoulders and all that kind of stuff, all these things, that is if you want a powerful woman, that's what she should look like. You don't get to have power that looks like this. And again, even there, that's a moderate amount of muscle. That is what I would consider to be feminine muscle. It's got a lot more definition than we've seen in pretty much any of the actual live action characters, even the animated series. Animated? Why am I pronouncing words so weird? But you see, she does have somewhat definition, but which is more than most women have. But even that's not power. Like that's. She could be a sprinter, she could be a high level athlete, but it doesn't represent the power that men have. Why is it that when we think about power, we think about strength in men, it's bulk, it's physique, but we have this, I don't want to call it a double standard because that phrase gets used way too much, but this idea that we can still be powerful and still be super duper strong, but we're going to be in this really, really tiny, petite, lithe, feminine package. Why, where did we get that idea? And more to the point, fellas, why is it? Because if you've talked to some guy and say, hey, what do you think about female superheroes? Oh yeah, they're awesome. They're great. Well, I mean, I'm sure it has nothing to do with skin tight suits. I mean, and hey guys, skin tight suits as well, but that's so you can see the power. That's so you can see the muscles. It needs to be very prominent. That's what lets you know these guys have strength. They got what it takes. So it's fine. Guys have skin tight, women have skin tight, but I'm sure that has absolutely nothing. The feminine allure has nothing to do with the affinity for heroes. If we can just be honest, female superheroes, if we can just be honest with ourselves here, it has more to do with the allure than it does with the power, because it's absent there. If you want to see a woman who is embodiment of power, the way that men is, that she's being a powerful woman, she's going to look like a dude. But I hear guys complain all the time. Oh, why does she doesn't have a chest, she doesn't have a butt, she's got a square jaw. Why does she look so mannish? That is women with power. That is women with strength. That's what you would get. It's a very masculine looking female. And and you can say, well, there are some, we have some MMA fighters and stuff who, again, kind of have this physique here where it's not chunky necessarily, but there is definitely some strength there. But when we come to superheroes, that's not what we're looking for. You're usually getting very thin, almost darn right petite females. And you're going, okay, well, where's the power? How are you, why is it that men have to have muscles, have to have this show of the strength, show, hey, we whether we've built the muscle or it has been built, it's powered by a serum or something. In one way or another, you're saying, with the exception maybe of Spider-Man, who's typically the most petite of the fellas, like this is proof of power. But women, we want to have the proof of power. We want to have the power, but we don't want the proof. We don't want to actually see the power manifest. We want them to be this ridiculous, idealized, and I don't mean ridiculous, the feminine look, that's totally fine. But the idea but she's also super powerful. So my question is for guys who are saying, oh no, I totally love female superheroes. They're so great. I love them. They're so cool. I'm a big fan. Why is it? When did it become ideal to see a woman behaving as a man? Because that's what it is. They're protecting. They're doing the protecting. They're doing the fighting. They are behaving as men in the bodies of women. And if you want to compare that in any way, shape, or form to where we're at in society today, you start to connect the dots a little bit about how we've gotten to this point. Men looking to women and going, oh, that's so hot. For a woman to behave like a man, that's what I want to see. I mean, growing up, I didn't have anything against female superheroes. There was no one thought one way or the other. I'm just kind of absorbing it because you're a kid. You absorb what is put in front of you and you're going, okay, super. And yes, they're pretty, and that's the thing. You're not looking at their strength. You're just going, well, she's really cute. She's really pretty. And, in most cases, there is some level of revealing to the outfits, even if they're wearing like a full bodysuit, like Rogue from the X-Men. She still, leaves very little to the imagination in that regard, in pretty much every way that matters, unless you want to get like super off the rails with it. But, and even today I saw they were talking about the new character for, what is it? Marvel Snap. What's her name? X-Men. She's Frost. No, not Marvel Snap. That's the card game. Marvel. Crap. Marvel game. Yeah. So, I mean, this is just showing a part of it. And that's the way, and people would say, well, this is the way she is in the comics. And look, there are people out there going, oh, women in revealing clothes, that's so horrible. Again, it's been in the comics forever. That's part and parcel. And you could say with her character, she's like a man-eater kind of thing. She's a seductress or whatever. That's kind of her shtick. So I'm not out, condemning this, oh, there's too much skin or anything. But what I'm saying is, what is this fetishization or this fixation on a woman who, just like Marston said, she's got the allure of a woman, but the power of a man, and that will make men willing to be or wanting to be their slaves. The word simp, I don't like to use it because it is overused, but you have these men who are now so emasculated that and I'm not saying, look, I'm not, there's not a dichotomy here. Well, if you're a man and you like female superheroes, you're a weenie or you're emasculated. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm asking the question, why is it that we've gotten to the point, and it's taken place since 1940, really, where men were like, yeah, I totally dig a woman behaving as a man. I totally dig a woman embodying the traits that a man embodies. For the majority of people who aren't on the outskirts of the bell curve, men protectors, women protected, and again, plenty of other qualities, but those aren't important. Women don't like those. Men don't like those. Nobody likes those qualities. They all want to be masculine. They all want to be fighters. They all want to be protectors. How do we look at that? Men look at a woman and go, yeah, that's cool. That's kind of hot, or that's she's one of my favorites. I definitely like gals acting like men. To me, as I've begun to see this stuff, it's become kind of repugnant to me, honestly. And again, it's not there's a bit, like I said, this is not me going, this needs to change right now. We need to stop having female characters. We should banish them. I'm asking the question, why are we okay, men, especially when you say, well, I don't want to see a masculine looking woman. I don't want to see a woman who looks like a man, but I'm okay with a woman who acts like a man. I just want to see a woman acting like a man, but in a female body. Like I said, for me personally, female superheroes, I had nothing against them, but I was never drawn to them. I never wanted to, they were never in the playtime, like I have, like vintage, Secret Wars, and I don't think there was a gal in Secret Wars, but then the superhero power line, and look at this. So superpowers, figures, vintage, Superman. Okay, he's not in great shape, but you look at, come on, show me the big picture. There we go. So you see that, right? I mean, he looks sturdy, he looks robust. You can squeeze his legs and his arms, do the punching action. Square jaw, again, a good representation. Looks, again, pretty sturdy. You can stand up, and I can vouch for it. I got one. And, you can stand him up. You can put him through all kinds of playtime, and he'll do the test. He'll stand up to the test of time. Superpowers. I believe this is the only one. Vintage. Wow. I mean, I knew she was rare. Why is that? Stop it. So again, it's a little bit smaller, but again, kind of weird. Like I don't know, to me personally as a figure, and I know people that collect this stuff and they love the Wonder Woman figure. It's great. Now this one's a bad example because you can see there's discoloration on the body. That can happen on any figure. That's not a thing of Wonder Woman, but you can tell the plastic on her legs and chest is decolored. But like you see, they look very spindly little arms. And I think I had one friend that had them, and like it was whatever the action is. I don't even know what power action deflector bracelets. I'm not sure how that works. I don't know if her arms are supposed to cross, but like she just wasn't. It wasn't a very durable figure. It was and it doesn't look. I mean, it looks like her. It kind of has a resemblance, but again, really skinny arms. Like for me as a kid, I wasn't looking at like female characters and going, oh, this is great. Like I want to play with females. And that didn't sound right, but you know what I'm saying? But I've seen plenty of people that collect the vintage toys and they grew up at the same time. They're like, oh yeah, it was great to have female figures. I mean, I've got Baroness from like G.I. Joe. There are some characters that actually don't look too bad in the sculpts and everything. But again, the idea, but it was never like an appealing thing to me. Now, yes, post-puberty, I found a lot more to admire in female superheroes. But it wasn't, oh, cool, they're protecting people. They're rescuing people. It was more so the allure that Marston talked about. And that's not like objectification or whatever. That's just literally, that's, eyes are drawn to that. But to me, it wasn't like, and so you got, okay, sexy. And I understand, like, you got like Catwoman. She's a cat burglar. Okay, you can have like the whole mask and thing. Like that's not ridiculous at all. Or just do the thing. But like she was a cat burglar. She was lithe. She was athletic, like a gymnast. And she was stealthy. That's totally fine. But then you have Black Cat, who I think is kind of similar, but she does a lot more pow. And that's where you start going, okay, Not really buying the action sequence here. And here's the question. This is something I know people are going to say. It's a fantasy, dude. Comic books are fantasy. They don't have to be real life. They don't have to be, it's not based on a character. You can have strong female characters. Again, strong meaning buff, meaning physically powerful. That's really what strong means, because a well-written character is a strong character as far as I'm concerned. But this idea of physically strong, dominant women is, but it's fantasy. And I go, okay, fair point. The question is, why is that in your fantasy? What makes you desire to see a woman doing what a man does, protecting men, protecting other women, protecting whoever? Why is it that is in your fantasy? Like, if I'm going to do a fantasy, it's not going to be about something that doesn't make sense to me, or I think is completely back-asswards. Like, I'm not going to fantasize about, like, in my mind, my fantasy never goes, I want to be rescued by a strong woman. That's just not a thing. Like, that's just not a desire. Like I said, if it happens, okay, great. I'm not going to begrudge a woman for coming to my aid or helping me out, but I'm also not looking for that, and nor do I find it desirable in any way. I don't find that a desirable trait in a woman, whether in real life or fantasy. There's nothing about fantasy that makes it more appealing. Now, you can have, playing D&D, and we've got, you got sorcerers, you got, these, fighters or whatever. And my general rule is this: once you break the laws of the universe, of reality. So, like, even something like John Wick, where you see a guy fall from, 20 feet onto his back and his back of his head, and he just kind of gets up and walks it off. I'm like, okay, all bets are off. They want to have some hyperpower woman ninja gal come in there. It's fine, because we're not trying to tether it to reality at all. But again, why? Now, I will say that this is again, I'm batting this around. I'm saying, hey, different ideas, different places. Like, there is a different dynamic that women bring to a situation. So, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, depending. And I've heard people say both. And personally, like, I played D&D several times with several groups of people, and I personally enjoy D&D sessions more when there is at least one or two gals there, because it adds a different dynamic, a different feel to it. I don't know exactly what it is, and it's not some like relational thing, because one of them was the DM's wife. Like, he invited me, and they did the whole thing, and it was cool because she had like these scented candles that had this like ethereal aroma to them, and they she decorated the place to look really cool and immersive, and she was, I can't remember what character she had, but she was she was a player in the game, and he was a great DM, and it was cool. So there was no like, there was nothing that I particularly, I mean, she's married, so in my mind, you don't even think, is she attractive or not, because she's married. You don't go past that. But even just objectively going, okay, there was nothing like, it wasn't even like, oh, if she was single. It was just, so it's not even some kind of thing, but there is, because men and women are different. When you put men and women together, there is a different dynamic than if you just have a bunch of guys. And some guys probably prefer all guys. Gals maybe prefer all gals. I kind of like a mix, especially with like D&D. I think there are some situations where it's not good to have a mix, where it's a different dynamic, but not in a good way, not in a positive way. Again, because I accept and understand and appreciate there's a difference between men and women. And I don't think the majority of us are overlapping. That there's a lot of guys that are, got that nurturing vibe and that desire. I think a lot of that comes from being told it's bad to be masculine. It's bad that you're a sexist. If you want to provide, or you want to protect, or you think of yourself as that is a sexist thing, because you're making it seem like women are inferior and they're not good. There's no inferior or superiority here. That is problematic. If you look at it and go, as a man, I am superior. That's not the case at all. But to acknowledge that is my purview is as a protector, and that is something that I aspire to, and that's something that I enjoy, and something that excites me and resonates with me. And to watch a comic book character do that resonates with me as a man. That's something that I'm like, yes, that is fantastic. Look at him kicking butt and doing all these things that, I want to, in my own way, be able to do. It speaks to a higher, if you want to call it calling, there's no religious context to that, but just again, you call it an aspiration. Now, I do have beef with people that consider guys like Superman to be aspirational heroes, but that's for my other video. That's a whole other thing. In fact, though, I was going to talk about it here. I don't know how to loop it in. We'll get there once I finish with this, though, because there's another thing. Oh, let me go ahead and we'll do this. So for me personally, there is nothing there, and I just put that question to you. Why is it that whether it's in real life, because I mean there's no mistaking about it. We know it. We've seen it in Hollywood movies and everything. It's been glamorized. We talk about it, and again, no shame, but there are guys who do like to be stomped on, treated poorly, dominated by, tied up by whatever, by women. It's a thing. And I don't know what the root of that is. So, but all I'm doing is acknowledging that there are guys in real life who do like that. I'm going to say again, at the end of the bell curve, and there's a difference because, if you look at like some movies back in, like at the outset, you did have female leads, but a lot of time they were, especially if they're going to be villains or something, they're like femme fatales. Because this is the thing, folks. As much as we hear, this woman's life is all about a man. Everything she does revolves around a man. Have you looked at history? Have you looked at literature and the amount of things that guys do for women? That they do for the love of a woman, they do for the affection, they do for the attention of a woman. They do all kinds of ridiculous and stupid things, and noble things and great things, but also stupid things. Like men, there's so much that men do in order to show themselves to be worthy of, or to show themselves that they are willing to do and to be everything that a woman would need. And again, that's not as a savior complex. That's not as a guy's going to save you and do all these things for you. This is not a Prince Charming delusion, which, that's a whole other thing. We talk about fairy tales. Fairy tales, I just as a side note, fairy tales are for a certain age group. They're written by adults, but they're for a certain age group to introduce them to concepts like justice and truth and goodness and tenderness and love and the idea of a true love and those types of things. They're there to get those concepts into a young mind that has really no either. If they have a concept of it in terms of some resonance of truth within them, they still don't know how to articulate it. And so this is supposed to be showing the way, but it's very simplistic. There's no nuance to it. It's very direct. Prince, princess. Rich, wealthy. Obviously those aren't the thoughts of a child. They're just thinking, oh, he looks stunning and she looks ravishing. They're supposed to represent purity and goodness and wholesomeness and the idealized life. And so that's fine for children and very young children. But as soon as you start getting older, the fairy tales should start to become more mature. They should start to become more nuanced, where it's not all about her finding the prince. It's not about him rescuing the princess. It's finding two people in poverty. That's a bad example, but you know what I'm saying? Like, we're supposed to be getting away from the very simplistic and base. That's not the end result. We shouldn't be adults reading children's stories. And to a degree, now comics have come a long way since their original inception. I'm not pretend to be a comic scholar, but I do know originally, like with Batman, it was like, oh, we put Robin in there and we took out like the bat gun because kids are going to be reading this. And Marsden even said, hey, young kids are reading this. I can educate them. I could put my propaganda into these books and try to sculpt minds to be willing slaves of female, tender, loving submission, domination, whatever the hell crap he was talking about. We know that there were young readers. And like I said, Batman, they made additions because they're like, hey, to appeal to that younger audience. So comics for a long time were considered to be more for young adults, like kids, young adults. So you have very tenuous and very broad, and I would call it simplistic morality when it comes to violence, fighting, truth, justice, the American way, all that, killing, all that kind of stuff. Very, very basic stuff that you would want kids to learn. Like, here's a foundation. Don't do these things. Try to embody these qualities. But we're supposed to grow out of that. And I will say comics have grown. Obviously, there are comics that appeal. There are people my age that are reading and collecting comics and loving them. And then you get graphic novels. And so you have comics that they've not only matured in general, but you could almost say they're skewing towards an older demographic anyway, but yet they are retaining many of the same simple, simplistic, unnuanced values and morals of comics when they were just, for little Timmy there, reading the book, or little Marius too, or what have you. But going back to the fairy tales, like, we are not supposed to hold to the truths of a fairy tale as young adults and adults. There are supposed to be stories that resonate more with our real life experience, and they go, you know what? There's not always going to be a prince or a princess. It's not always going to be true love or love at first sight. It's not always going to be, oh, slay this thing and now you get to be with the guy. Maybe she doesn't want to be with you. Maybe you get injured with this. And then you have some of those darker stories where you have some more cautionary tales mixed in that are more about, hey, beware of these things. Beware of something like envy and pride and all this kind of stuff. So, Oh, nut bunnies. I knew it was going to happen. I went off on the tangent about fairy tales, and now I got to go back to, like actual, like the power of, I guess, the power of men, or the power that men have, the strength versus what women have. And this idea that Marston had that they're just belittled, that nobody wants those qualities because they're not met with power. Here's an example of what I consider to genuinely be female power, if you will. Here we go. I'm going to play a little bit of it, and then we're going to pause because I don't want to copyright strike. But this is from the series Jack Reacher.
Get the cuffs.
Okay, this isn't going to happen. Reacher, sit in the back. Hey,
Okay.
I know you're not the kind of guy to beat
she's-
up on somebody half your...
Okay, so I can't hear because I don't have my headphones in. It was a mistake on my part. But in this part of the scene, they were about to come to blows, and she tells him, "Now you look the different. He's 6'4", incredibly jacked. She's she's a very short and petite gal. The belt, the actual belt, it takes up like half of her torso. But so she separates them, and I'm trying to remember exactly what she said. I need to get that. I might have to listen to this real quick because I had it in my head. But we got to this point, so here we go.
Without good reason.
He's giving me a reason.
Yeah? Well, I know people. And you've got kind eyes.
So that was it. And I'm trying to remember, but essentially she diffused the situation. She didn't get in his face and shake her fist and go, "You stop that right now, Reacher." Or unless you don't want me to kick your ass, you want me to put you in the ground, I suggest you sit. Like, she didn't do girl power stuff. She didn't do the power and force of, the Wonder Woman female. She did something that is unique that woman could do. She got between the two of them and she said, hey, I know this isn't you. I know this isn't the kind of guy that you are. He's like, "Really? How do you know that?" And she says, "Because you have kind eyes." I think it was either kind or gentle eyes. And I knew you wouldn't just attack a guy because of that. If a guy came up to me and said, "You have gentle eyes," or "You have kind eyes," I'm going to punch him in the face. I mean, not really, but like, I'm going to be like, "Dude, what the heck?" Like, it doesn't work to have a guy come up to you and say, "Hey, I know you're better than that." Now, there's a certain way you could say, "Hey man," like, I mean, there's ways you could phrase it to be like, "Hey, don't stoop to his level," but it would be more to an appeal to pride, or it would be more in a way of like, "Hey, don't be an idiot," kind of thing. But you see the way that she did it. Let's do it again here.
Get the cuffs.
Okay, this isn't going to happen. Reacher, sit in the back. Hey,
So she-
I know
again,
you're not the kind
separate,
of guy to beat up
go
on
over that
somebody...
way. Oops. And then she said, "Because you have," he's like, and again, he's still not completely down. Like, she's been able to separate him. Because what is he? He's not going to push through her. He's not going to shove her out of the way. Big 6'4" guy, essentially shut down by this petite gal. And she says, "You have kind eyes. You're not the kind of guy that would do that." That is something that uniquely that a woman can do. That is the power of what you talk about, that compassion, you talk about that tenderness. For a woman, it doesn't matter if because at that point, there's no relationship between them. They just kind of met. I think that was episode 1. So they don't even have this history or anything. It's not like, oh, they're sleeping together and, now she has this sway over him. Barely know each other. She's shown him, she's shown to a degree that she cares about him and that she does believe that he didn't do any bad stuff. But she's coming in and she's got her boss right there as the guy that she was separating the two from. She doesn't address him. She dresses Reacher and says, hey, this isn't who you are. You have kind eyes. Very sincere. You can tell she's not messing with him. You have very kind eyes. And I don't believe that you would attack a man who's half your size. Or again, I don't remember what she said. You heard what she said. To me, that is something that unique that a woman can do. When a woman, as I was saying, doesn't have to be attractive necessarily. I'm not saying she wasn't, but doesn't have to be attractive. Doesn't have to be whatever. But a female saying, hey, to a man, hey, I see this quality in you. I see a kindness in you. I see this in you. This isn't you. It just diffuses it. And I'm not saying that works all the time. It's some magic spell, but most guys are not going to shove a woman like that out of the way or say, "Oh, screw you," or "You shut up, bitch." Like, it's just kind of like, what do you say to that? Because there is that tenderness. There is that I don't know what do you call it? That give to a woman, that very precious and cherished kind of ideal, even if it's not somebody that you're in love with, that this gentle, I hate to say it like this, but creature, and it's men can be creatures too. It's just, but that idea, genteel creature, just saying, hey, I see a goodness in you, and I don't want you doing this. It hits in a way that would never happen with a guy doing that. It certainly wouldn't happen that way. Like I said, a guy can appeal to another guy's pride. He can appeal to logic and say, hey man, don't be stupid. You're going to get yourself arrested. Even then, that's not really diffusing the situation. That's usually when guys have to kind of step in because we don't have that ability to shut down the pride, have the ability to shut down that mechanism so quickly and so abruptly. Now look, this is not a documentary. Like I said about the other thing, whatever it was I was talking about. It's not a documentary. I'm not saying, oh, you see this happen in this TV show? That's how it happens in real life. But it is. But that was when I saw that, I dropped my jaw and I went back and rewatched. I was like, holy cow! I've never seen that in a TV show or movie where it is so shown. This very petite, tiny gal is able to stop this emotional driven, because I think he just found out that his brother died, if I remember correctly. So he's got a lot of emotion going. Even if not that, this is a guy who has arrested him and accused him of doing bad things, and he poked him in the chest right before this. I tried to keep the clip short so that it wouldn't be struck down. But like, he's poking him in the chest and saying, "You're going back to prison, and I'm going to take you in." And so he's got this. So Reacher is riled up. He's pissed off. His freedom's being threatened, and this petite, small, delicate wisp of a gal with a giant oversized belt comes in there and just says, "Hey, you have kind eyes." Like, that's not, and I like, and again, the way I wanted you to actually hear it, because you hear me say it, it sounds kind of cheesy and insincere, but she plays it very well and she executes it very well. And as a guy, I'm sitting there going, oh yeah, you can't do anything. Like, again, what are you going to shove her out of the way? Like, there is the fact that she was delicate, the fact that she's like that, that's an aversion for most men. That right there is an aversion. It's kind of like, I mean, gals, I'm sure you can, I've heard women talk about this all, like puppies or a kitten. You know, the way you look at them, you don't look at them as pathetic or pitiful. You look at them, it's a puppy. It's harmless. It's kind, it's innocent. And certainly not claiming that women are innocent, or all women are innocent, certainly. But that similar thing, it's not a condescension. It is just a precious thing. And even if it's not, again, somebody where you've got any sex drive going or any hormones going, as a guy, it is very hard to push through that. It's very hard to be like, no, you're wrong. I'm a meanie weenie, and I'm gonna go punch this guy. Like, it's just not gonna happen. You're certainly not going to remove her. You're not gonna push her out of the way. You have to go around her, and she can step in front of you. And that is the power. If we want to even talk about that in such crass terms, that is the power that women have. Again, like I was saying, when you look at history, that was what I was talking about, like fairy tales. How many fairy tales are built around the prince trying to get to the princess? How many, like Shrek, his whole thing, is going to find the lady, find the princess, Princess Fiona, like it is the driving force of so many stories. And it's not just, you're a figure. We got to be honest. These are stories about guys and their adventures in these particular instances. And so they are focused on the guy. And so the woman isn't going to have as much agency or as much part of the story, because it's not necessarily about her. It's about what he's doing to get there. And so if the story's bigger, it's more robust, you have more time to work, you can bring her side of it into there. Like, Megamind is one of my favorites. And we get a good chunk of Tina Fey's, what's her name? Roxanne. We get a good chunk of her character in there. And it's comedic. Like, she's not a, typical damsel in distress. She does, need saving at different points. She does still have those feminine characteristics and those desirable attributes, but she's not just like, oh, help me, I'm so weak and pathetic. She messes with Megamind. She's like, okay, well, we're going through this again. Yeah, okay, the same shtick, whatever. She's messing with me. It's comedic. It's kind of funny. She's got that she's got the moxie, if you will. It's very entertaining, much more entertaining than, oh, well, it's me. When will a man come to save me? Like, that's not necessarily entertaining either. Like, guys aren't looking for a gal who just sits there and is like, come win me. I'm just going to sit here and wait for my the guy to come for me. We don't need that. So I'm totally fine with some fun interaction and a gal trying to escape and doing whatever, like a Princess Bride. I think she tries to get away or whatever. But oh gosh. Somebody just started their car and it threw my brain off. See, women probably don't have this problem. Weakness of a guy. But yeah, just the amount of stories that are driven by guys. So anyway, so you can have instances where there's multiple interaction with the, you can actually see both sides maybe. And like rom-coms are kind of that way. You're seeing the guy side, you're seeing the girl side, and they come together. But in a lot of these stories, okay, it's about this guy, he's coming of age, or it's it's the hero's journey. And in those cases, side characters aren't going to get a lot of focus. It doesn't mean that women don't have no agency. It's just it's not their story. So if you want to have a woman going through a story, but it would be different. Typically, it would be different. And the idea that like and I don't know. Here's another question: women, do you enjoy watching like Predator, Aliens? I'm sure there are gals who do. I actually grew up. My mother babysat a gal named Tina. Hello, Tina, if you're out there, if you happen to see this. But we grew up, she babysat her, and we'd play Care Bears together. We'd play Legos, we do house, kind of stuff. We never really played heroes, superheroes. She was not so much into that kind of thing. But we spent quite a time playing. We played board games. Her father was a police officer. Her mother was a teacher. And her dad let her watch RoboCop when she was like 7 years old. So, and she could handle it. She didn't have nightmares or anything. She was just totally cool with that. So she watched all these like 80s action horror movies at a young age, just because, she was daddy's girl and she was cool with it. And she was the one telling me, oh, Murphy, getting his arms blown off and this crazy stuff. And I was like, whoa, I wasn't allowed to watch this stuff. I didn't see any of those movies until I was at least like 16 or 17. So I understand there are gals that can like that stuff, but like you have got movies that are, about the machismo and all that kind of stuff. And it's exaggerated. That's the other fallacy that modern writers of quote unquote strong female characters don't understand. Not only do men we don't look at these things as power fantasies, as power trips. It's like, yeah, totally. Like I want to be big and bad and man, it makes me feel alive to watch this fantasy play out of a man doing badass stuff. There is that protective vibe, but then you have the action stars of the 80s, the Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger, those kinds of films. They're over the top. I mean, they're not comical necessarily, but they are romps. They are extravaganzas. They are understandably just the extreme to the point of almost ridiculousness, machismo. We don't look at that and go, I want to be like that. Oh, that's really super empowering. We look at that and go, oh man, it's just crazy. But look at that guy okay, he's holding 250 caliber machine guns, one in each hand and going to town. I mean, and we're not necessarily thinking that out loud, but we're not looking at that going, whoa, that's a real man right there. It's just like, it's goofy fun. It is goofy fun. Now you get some that are like Predator and Aliens. Like there's some that are more serious. And again, Aliens is a great one where you've got, some of the machismo in there, but it's not ridiculous. It's not overboard. And you have Sigourney Weaver. The thing when you talk about the reason why people talk about her and, Sarah Connor, why those two are often cited is because they strike that balance where, yeah, they're shooting guns, but they're not shooting 50 cal with, toothpicks sticking out of their mouth and like scratching their armpits or whatever. They're still feminine. Both of them still have a very motherly instinct, as you see with how Sigourney Weaver, I can't remember her name in the movie, but with like Newt, where there's that very motherly, going after the kid, trying to, help the child. Again, there is a protective vibe. You talk about the mama bear type deal, like that's a real thing. Like mothers are very protective of their children, but ideally you don't want the mother to be the last line of defense between her and the child. Like you do want the husband to be there. You want the man to be there to protect them both. If it comes down to it, the women will fight, but you don't want to have to push that far. When resources get really scarce, when manpower gets really scarce, when you're pulling for everything, you're going, hey, we'll take anybody. And there are definitely in history, women are very, well, not women, but people are very quick to point out, there were snipers in World War II and there were fighters in World War II. There were people. Yes. And to a degree, I would say there was some exaggeration, some embellishment, just like there is for other stuff as well. But yes, there were women who did fight, and there still are women who fight and who, like I said, we have MMA, we have these different things, and there's nothing saying there's anything wrong with them or they're mentally wrong or there's something crazy. But again, outliers, very, very, very small in terms of percentage wise. The vast majority, not so much. So, but I'm going like, guys look at these machismo, but the reason why. Sigourney Weaver, like you see her, she's struggling. She's got this big gun. She's got it strapped over her shoulder. I wish I had the image up here, but she's got like the gun. She got it strapped on there. And it's like, so she's not just wielding it, one-handed like this. It's like, okay, she's got it draped over her shoulder. She's kind of hunched a little bit. Not really because the gun was a prop and didn't really weigh as much, but she's not, she and yes, she punches the alien mother in the face, but not with her bare fist. She does it with a mech. Like there's an augmentation. There was, I can't remember the series now, but there was a gal who fought off several guy attackers, but she used things like an iron skillet. She used the environment around very creatively. And yeah, I mean, look, like I said, you give a woman a knife or a gun, she's going to be lethal. It's not just like, oh, she can't possibly pull that. She can't possibly stab me with that. You give her the training and show her what to do. She's capable. She's got the athleticism. She's got the physical aspect down, and you give her the knowledge and the training. She can be very lethal. It's very dangerous. I'm certainly not insinuating there's a harmlessness there. But she was taking on these bigger guys, but it wasn't just, I'm going to punch you in the face and punch you here and do whatever. She was playing dirty. She was doing some really, using the environment to her advantage. And so it was like, okay, you believe it, you buy into it. And so even in a fantasy setting, they still had the wherewithal to make it a little more realistic. And same thing with Sarah and, call her Sigourney because I just blanking on her name right now. Both of them were gun-toting, but not ridiculous gun-toting. Both of them were doing action things, but you could tell they also weren't doing it because it wasn't like a celebration of female power. It was, I'm in a crap hole situation. Everybody's dying. I need to survive. And this is the way I do it. And they're running, from the Terminator. She's running from the alien, the face hugger. She's terrified of him. She's not like, screw you. I'm not scared of no face hugger. Like she's scared to death and trying to get away from it. And you see her like breaking down into tears. There's an emotional capacity to it, aspect to it. Same thing with Sarah Connor, when she's, call to John kind of thing. Like when she's got the Terminator's got the deal skewer through her shoulder in the molten metal place, there's the pain, there's the anguish, and she's able to, with one hand, cock the gun and barely get it up there with one hand and shoot it. But, at the very end falls short. And of course, you got Arnold comes up on the track and delivers the final shot. But, so there was a partnership there, but neither one of them were like, look at me, I'm a badass female empowerment. It was, I'm a woman in this situation. I need to survive. And I would say, for the most part, within the realm of as realistic as Hollywood can be with their depictions, I thought both those characters were portrayed accurately in those situations. With the typical embellishment of Hollywood, but that applies to men as well. But in general, women, are you drawn to these displays of masculine prowess, these over exaggerations, or are you just kind of like, that's kind of for the guys? I mean, I could see it going either way, going, oh my gosh, I want a guy like that. But not really. Like, what was it? Hugh Jackman's wife, I believe, said, or Hugh Jackman said about his wife, he's like, she did not like me when I was playing Wolverine because she doesn't like the hard, the six pack and the hard body and the muscles and all that kind of stuff. She likes a little fat there, a little protection, a little more of not a dad bod necessarily, but she wasn't necessarily keen on this like uber fit thing. Like that is something that guys want, and not in like wanting Hugh Jackman, but like that's what we want to see is that prowess. But women aren't necessarily looking for that. Want him to be capable, but also want to be able to snuggle, also want to have that intimacy there and not have it just be like this exposed in you. Now, there may be women going, oh, that's exactly what I want. And that's nothing wrong with that. But again, I think that's on the outlier end of things. And same thing with guys. Guys don't mind, the gal to have some muscle, some definition, some tone. Gal with a six pack, not my thing personally. I like a flat stomach. Yeah, I'm totally down with that. But a six pack, not so much. Like it's fine. That's a nice level of fitness, but that's not something I would look for and be like, oh, I want you to have some muscular definition there. Because again, muscular, like that type of development. Now there is a strength in the arms. Like you see like, women that just like do like yard work even. I know people are like, oh, housewives but women holding, babies anywhere from like 8 pounds to like, I don't know, 15 pounds or somewhere around there, in one arm while doing something else, whatever else. I know it's going to all sound, it's all sexist, but, doing other things, working in the garden, having to mow the lawn. If they do that, typically, that's a guy thing to do, but, women doing that, you can see they've got you see definition of the forearms and in the arms, but it's not muscle. It's not like chiseled out muscle. It's a certain level of capability and of, looks very capable and looks very, sturdy or I don't know of a more fitting way or more flattering way to say it, but there is an appeal to that. But again, it's not ripped muscle. That is tied with protection, defensiveness, power, again, internal, not power over somebody, which is something that looking for in a guy, that's what guys want to do and to be. So again, no problem. You're a fitness gal and you're out there and you've got your stuff going. But I have seen some videos where some of the gals that are into that kind of thing, they're like, I wanted to take charge of my life. Something happened to them in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not saying it was necessarily all severe, all bad, but something happened in their life where they felt they were out of control. And one of them, she expressed it very well. She said, I just like the idea that I get out what I put in. So, you can put a lot of work into a job and somebody may go, we're going to go with another direction. There's a lot of things we can do in life that don't give us, especially like within the immediate, with any immediacy, they don't give us the reward that we would like for the effort we put in. But when you work out, if you do it a certain way, you're going to see the results. And so there was a level of control and assertiveness felt like she had in her life because she could go to the gym, do something, and see the results of it within the week. And she could build towards something. But she also had a very bad situation in her personal life, and she needed to feel like she was going to assert some kind of control. And I'm not saying that everyone who works out has that background, but I've seen that in many instances, and it is about again feeling like you have some more control over your life because a guy did something he shouldn't have done. A lot of the time, it's a guy that went past that and said, you know what, I don't see you as somebody who's worth protecting. I see you as something to take. I see you as something, a prize or an object. And goodness knows, where does that come from? I wonder. My gosh, because as much as you have this female empowerment, for me, look, it comes down to the guys. And I've seen so many videos that I know so many people are just pissed off right now. And again, I'm sorry. It's just, I'm calling it like I see it. That's all. It starts with the guy because like look at OnlyFans. OnlyFans doesn't exist if men don't buy into it. If there aren't men, quote unquote, simping, if there aren't men going lusting and looking at women as something to get something from and just going, whatever it is they happen to be displaying. If men don't populate OnlyFans, if they don't pay money into that, women don't do OnlyFans because there's no reason for them to do it. Nobody's watching them. Nobody's paying them. It goes away. Prostitution. If guys just say, you know what, sex is for the woman that I want to have children with. It's for a woman that I want to at least have a family with or have the potential to have a family with. Maybe we're not looking to have a family right now, but if we were to start having one, it's okay because this is who I want to do it with. Men say that and say, yeah, I'm not going to whore myself out either. I'm not going to have sex with just somebody. Like, I don't need to feed my urges. I can actually, have some kind of self-control and not just sleep with whoever. Prostitution goes away too. Now, I'm not saying this is like ideal world. I'm not saying we need to strive for this or this is what needs to happen, but let's face facts, guys. The buck starts with us. Like, if we stop endorsing these things, if we stop paying for them, if we stop making a market for them, the women stop doing them because there's no reason for them to do them. And I know that seems, simplistic. And like I said, it's not ever going to happen, but that is the empowerment of that. But you don't see guys typically, as male prostitutes. I mean, they exist, but it's not something you typically see. Same thing with OnlyFans. It's not the province of men. These are things that women do that men encourage because they are driven by self-gratification, a desire to gratify themselves, a desire to have the attention of a woman, that panting after female attention or affection for whatever broken part is in their lives. And so they create this market for these types of things. And that creates women who get into this and women know, I know quite a few, including my mom, sister, some other ones. They know when there's love and when there's lust, and lust isn't something that a woman craves. Now, there are women who, I would say, again, to some degree are broken. And when I say broken, I don't mean that you are dysfunctional and you're wrong and you're bad. It's out of sympathy. It's out of a compassion going, there's a fragment of you. You have been broken into pieces to a degree, and you're having to pick those up and deal with that. So there is a brokenness for a woman who craves affection or attention in whatever way it can be given to her. There was one article, I won't call the actress out, but there was an actress who was on OnlyFans with her daughter. And the actress is admittedly what we would consider over the hill, especially in terms of Hollywood. Hollywood, you've got a very short shelf life. There are some women who have more dignified or older roles later on, but typically not as much. Once you're out of that, you're drawing a crowd because the men are going, huh? Then you start losing your commercial ability as far as Hollywood is concerned, with some exceptions, Meryl Streep and some like that. But, Nut Bunny said, did it again. Lose my train of thought sometimes. You just, women younger, men older, crapola. Women are younger, they lose the liability. Oh, we're talking about men, talking about desire, acting. Why did I talk about acting? Anyway, the bottom line is it starts with, I'm just going to go back out of that whole thing and just say it starts with the guys. And I will say this, just putting it out there. I mean, I did a video on being a 44-year-old virgin, and I just tried to make that as innocuous as possible, not putting forward, just saying, hey, this is my story, this is where I'm coming from, because I had a certain intent in mind, and that was just to share this and to share this perspective that I don't think necessarily gets a lot of airplay. This is not that, though. This is just me coming out, like I said, guns blazing, just going to say what I'm going to say, and that is, if you take the pros of a society that believes in casual sex against the cons, it's no competition. From a purely cost to benefit, value add perspective, the self-gratification that happens with a society that's like, hey, gratify yourself whenever and with whoever you want to. That's free sex. That mentality, the self-gratification that you get from that, compared against everything from, STDs and, the strain, oh my gosh, did I get a pregnant, to actually a pregnancy, like this whole abortion debate that we have, that most of that goes away without casual sex. Because typically if you're having intercourse as a married couple, you're probably having it, at least if you're not trying to procreate, you at least are able to say, okay, well, if it does happen, we can handle it. We'll figure it out. So that whole debate back and forth, oh, women's rights, it goes away because you're going, we're not just having sex for the heck of it. Like, we're not treating something that is designed to create a family, something that is like purpose. Like, you can see, hey, when we do this thing, it creates children. You take that and say, oh, no, let's just make it something that's fun and makes you feel good. That's like the most irresponsible, immature type thing. And look, I've got plenty of friends who would disagree with me on that, and that's totally fine. We're still friends. So you can disagree with me on that. We're still friends, and I don't think any less of you, and there's no judgment there or anything, but I'm simply saying, I don't think it's a good idea. I think you cannot say that society is better when they promote free sex and versus promoting it purely to start a family. I think it's realistic. I think you can, I think there are men that do have enough self-control and self-discipline to say, I don't have to sow my wild oats. Like, that's another thing too. Men, like, it's a whole thing. It's like, well, I'm a guy. What do you expect? Like, there is a lie. One, you got the lie of the 80s and 90s sitcoms where guys are a bunch of immature idiots that can't keep it straight. And the long-suffering women have to roll their eyes and, and I like those shows. I like them a lot. I mean, as much as whoever wants to say whatever about Cosby afterward, the Cosby Show, Cosby was probably one of the more productive and mature father male figures in those sitcoms. Every other one was pretty much an idiot. I mean, I liked Home Improvement, but Tim Allen was crap. I mean, yes, he did apologize. He learned his lessons, but he was always the infantile type guy. And again, we talk about like the benefits of being a man or the virtues. You take those to excess and you get your Tim Taylors. You get these other guys that are just Carl Winslow in Family Matters. He was another good father figure. Mostly it was, Steve Urkel learning a lesson or his daughters or something. And sometimes him and Harriet would have back and forth, but they could kind of play off each other. It was a good, pretty good dynamic as well. But, the Simpsons and stuff. And look, I'm not saying that it's some conspiracy to make men, but to make men think that they're a certain way or to program men, but it's really hard to ignore how fathers have been portrayed in media. And when you hear guys say, well, it's just my nature. Like, I just want to sow. Who said it's in your nature to sow your wild oats and that monogamy, that having, a single partner is like antithetical to being a man. Like, you can say I have a sex drive and that's well and good, but that doesn't mean that or give a license, just go, okay, just bastard children all over the world. Like, maybe there was a time in history where that was okay because, trying to populate the earth. And I'm not saying it was okay, but that it was, it was more common practice. But it hasn't been that way for a while. And I don't want to go too far into the weeds. We are pretty far into the weeds in that regard. But my point being, circling it back around, a lot of things start with guys. And I know that makes both men go, hey, women, what about these women that are crappy and they're manipulative and they're gold diggers and all this kind of stuff. Hey, I'm not saying there aren't nasty women out there. I'm not saying there aren't horrible women out there that through no fault of a man. Like, I think a lot of times we have baggage from relationships where one was abusive or one was manipulative or, however that works out, and it creates, and as a good man said, hurt people hurt. And so when somebody is hurting, somebody has a wound from a previous relationship, man or woman, they bring that hurt into that relationship, and they can then hurt, through that injury that they suffered. And that just creates more problems. Ideally, you get healed and you get restored, and there's forgiveness and everything, and you can move on in the relationship. But a lot of times it's just kind of pushed downhill if you don't purposely set out and go, you know what, this is a weak spot in my life, a weak point, a weak place. I feel very insecure about this. Doesn't mean you need to cave to my insecurity, but just understand that if I lash out or say this, it's because there is a wound there, and you got to figure out a way to heal that. You got to figure out a way to move past that, because you don't want that wound just sitting there and him having to be worried about your insecurity and you always feeling insecure. So there is a give and take, but a lot of times it can be people hurt, but sometimes you just have people that are born funky. You have got narcissists. They're born that way. You got people who are just self-destructive, or they weren't raised right. So they weren't necessarily hurt in some way, but they were pampered in a way where they just know to take and take and take and take, and don't know how to give, and just are just going to keep taking. It's all about them. They're very self-centered, very self-focused, men and women. And so when they get with somebody who's looking to have a partnership, to go into a relationship, it's going to hurt them because it's all about them. And it's like, well, okay, so now my needs don't matter. I don't matter. I don't exist. And when you love somebody, the hurt, it can open a wound just because you actually care about that person. The fact they don't care about you, or they don't seem to esteem you in the same way, that's going to hurt you really bad. But that's to say, you can have people that just are jerks, both men and women. But a lot of this stuff comes from guys going, I'm just going to sleep with this gal. Like, and I'm not saying everything comes from sex and all the bad stuff comes from sex, but it's not a good thing. It doesn't make somebody feel particularly good if you have sex with them and then you're like, I didn't want a relationship. I just wanted to kind of get it out of my system. And it's like, okay. And it's not only women, but typically, again, I'm going to say bell curve, women, there is a relational aspect to it, or a relational implication, or relational desire, if it's functioning correctly. This is something that, I hate to say it, but just because, somebody goes, hey, I can have casual sex and it doesn't bother me, I don't feel anything, that doesn't mean it's healthy. That doesn't mean you're functioning correctly emotionally as a human being. You're probably detached. There's probably some brokenness in there, because when we look at what sex actually does and what it brings about, i.e. typically children, and if nothing else, a very close intimacy in a way that really there's no other way to rival that, the physical and emotional intimacy that comes in with that. Like, we know what that can do when it's done right for the right reasons. To say that process, it doesn't bother anymore. Maybe you've worn the mechanism out. Maybe you've stripped the gears, but it's supposed to mean something. And by golly, what are you going to tell your wife? You okay, you know what? Well, sex doesn't mean anything to me. Oh, hey, we get married. Yeah, we're together. We're going to consummate. Oh, the sex doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it's cool. We're married, but really it's all about the piece of paper. The fact, the sex, the intimacy, I've had that with a bunch of women. That really doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Like, you just have it with whoever. That's the problem. When it's broken one way and it gives you this liberation to just sleep with whoever, it also breaks down when you're actually trying to actually have a connection with somebody. And then you have, of course, pornography. I don't know if we're allowed to say that word on here, so I'm just going to say that one time. We'll see if it flies. But, this huge market of, again, the objectification of women, oh, hey, look, scantily clad lady, or whatever else, pleasure yourself through images of this. And you just want to break it down to a fundamental level. Like, I've got people I know that there's no religious context. There's no, this is right or wrong. They're just like, it's addictive. It is an addictive thing, and it trains your body, the chemistry in your brain, to react to rapid stimulus. Like, oh, here's an image, here's another image, here's another image, oh, here's a movie. And those are things that a real woman is not going to compete with, can't compete with. A fresh face every single day, that's not what a what a real woman can do. I mean, she can do her hair differently and everything like that, but it's one person. It's one body. You don't get the diversity of options that you get with pornography. You don't get the on demand. Well, I want it done this way. I want to see this part of it. I want to do it this way. The fantasy element of it doesn't translate to real life. And I'm sorry, but indulging and engaging and spending time in a fantasy isn't going to make you appreciate the real thing more. And it is, again, is very addictive. So I don't know why I'm going off on a tangent about this. This was not on the bingo card, as they say, for the discussion. But my point being, without going any further into it, I think it starts and stops with the guys. And as I said, a lot of guys are going, women have a hand in it too. And I'm not denying that. And women go, hey, we have our own agency. And I'm going, that's fine. But ultimately, as I said, difference between men and women, men initiate, men instigate, and it can be for good and it can be for bad. And I think men getting their stuff together, and the thing is, we can't be emasculated unless we let ourselves be emasculated. We can't give up something. We can't relinquish a position of protection and provision. It has to be relinquished. Women aren't going to take it away. No offense, women, but I mean, you talk about, women's rights and everything. This wasn't women literally fighting men and wrestling them down and being like, you give us our rights or else. It was men being very accommodating. Women weren't thrown in prison. Women weren't silenced. Women weren't smacked around. Whatever it was that they did, remember, they didn't have the right to vote. So you can't change the law if you can't vote. If voting is how you change the law and women don't have the right to vote, well, you're not going to change it. It took men going, okay, sure, we'll do this. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a good thing or bad thing. We'll say it's a good thing. That was a good thing that needed to happen. The equality and all that good stuff, even though none of the responsibility that comes with having that right to vote was also bequeathed. But that actually is off topic. Even though that was not the case, you could say that it was a good thing to have happened. But the fighting for it was you saying, we want this, and men going, okay. When you talk about the fight for it, and I'm not saying that there weren't guys that were going no, there wasn't opposition. There were plenty of women going no because they didn't realize that they could have one and not the other. They didn't realize that we can have the perks, we can have all these these rights and provisions, and we don't have all the responsibilities as well. We can actually just have one and not the other. So, oh great, hey, let's roll with this. But there was opposition, but it wasn't. They didn't have anything to lose. Like I said, it wasn't, hey, if you women go out and protest and start screaming about having the right to vote, we're going to throw you in jail for a few months. As far as I know, maybe it was, but as far as I know, there was no consequence to it. You were allowed to just say what you wanted to say, make your protest, make your case. And the worst that was going to happen is them saying no. And eventually he said yes. So it's not to belittle the tenacity of women saying yes, but when people look at today and they go, where are the feminists? You look at the men and women sports, you look at that whole debacle, and they're going, women are they're saying, where are the feminists? You got to remember, feminists at its very root. Now, depending on you could say where it started or how it manifested, I should say, or how it developed. But at its very root, feminism is, as Marsden was saying, women are just as good as men. We want to mix the two. We want women to still be feminine and to have their wiles, but we also want them to be powerful and strong. So you have this bastardization of what a woman is or is expected to be, and it is the good parts of a woman and the good parts of a man. And so therefore they're the better thing because they have the better of both halves, which that's not the case, but that's the illusion. That's the delusion. And you got to remember, it's women are just as good as men, not women are equal under the law. It's not that women and men complement each other. It's women don't need men. Women are just as good as men at everything. So first of all, you have the big problem with a feminist mentality is if we say that men should not be able to compete in women's sports for any particular reason, we're acknowledging that men are superior in that way, that men have that they have an advantage, a physical advantage, that men are just by default, they are stronger and they're able to do things better, faster than women can do. That doesn't really gel with the idea of, as Marsden would say, the strong woman forcing the man to be her love slave. That doesn't really work with that concept. So one, it would mean acknowledging that there is a different, that's the number two, but acknowledging that men actually are more capable in that way, and that there are just some things that women are not going to be as good as men are because men and women are different. And that is the second part, is that men and women are different. Well, no. Men behave in this way. Women should be able to behave in this way. Men do these things. Men aspire to be these things. Women can aspire to be them too, and they're just as capable of being it as men are. And that's where, bringing it back around, this whole superhero thing, you start teaching kids young in comics and TV shows and everything, and showing this female empowerment, which again is not real empowerment, as we talked about. But you start showing this, and you get women thinking, yeah, we can do all this, and you get the, as this says, becoming stronger and more confident. Doesn't say getting more capable, doesn't say actually objectively becoming better or actually objectively becoming stronger. You feel stronger, you feel more confident until you hit the wall of reality. And which is the ugly reality of the situation that we're seeing with men and women's sports, which is that it's not that you can't do things, you can't be things, but there are certain things in which you are not going to be as good as men, again, because we are different, fundamentally different. And so there are going to be things where you're much better, and certain things where you are more skilled. And when it comes to a disagreement, there is going to be that tender and nurturing side versus the more perhaps aggressive or logical side. And that's understanding that I'm probably the least, when it comes to like math and science and all that kind of stuff, the least productive. I remember Melissa Sauer, I think that was her last name. Melissa Sauer, I think it was. Anyway, she was my lab partner. She was much, much better at biology, and I think it was even chemistry. I think we were lab partners in both. I don't know. But she was much better at those than I was. So this is, again, not like, women can't be smarter, they can't think with the logical part of their brain, but in typically, as we've seen, I would say manifested more so often, men are, again, using more like a logic part of their brain versus the emotional. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for the emotional. It just means it needs to be meted with, the same thing with logic, needs to be meted with compassion and some degree of emotion and understanding, but it kind of requires both. And I would say that when it comes to decision-making, especially tough decision-making, should not be ruled by emotion. But that's kind of what this ties into. Process of becoming stronger, more confident. It's an emotion. It's a feeling that you have, not an actual thing, because that doesn't tie into, controlling one's life and claiming one's rights. Okay. I mean, the empowerment, I guess, technically, I guess, yes, if voting is a way of changing or of dictating what happens, there is a power in that. But once you get beyond that, the whole idea of empowerment in that vein gets kind of murky. But that's why when people say, where are the feminists when it comes to men and women's sports, feminists don't want to acknowledge that men are strong, that there is an advantage, that it's not fair for men to be competing, because that goes against the idea that women are equal in that regard, that they're on the same level. And it goes away from the whole women can be just as good as men, women can do it all, women don't need men. Men aren't even saying that. Men have never said we don't need women. Now there are men that are having to say, you know what, the dating thing isn't really working out right. I'm talking with some very crazy ladies, and I'm sure there are women that are saying the same thing about men, but it's you can have that where both sides are going, this doesn't seem like a very productive or viable relationship. But men as a whole are not going, screw it, who needs women? Men very much want women. That's never been a message of men, just like it's never been, we need strong men. We need, to see strong men in media. That's not a thing, because again, the whole concept of a strong character, it's like you got a well-written character, but a well-written character is going to have strengths and weaknesses, and they're going to develop, and they're going to have setbacks, but they're also going to prevail at the end unless it's a tragedy, which means ultimately they were strong in whatever way they needed to be. They had enough perseverance. They had enough tenacity. They had enough compassion. Whatever it was that they needed to have to make them for them to achieve their objective, they had that. Therefore, you would consider them strong. I mean, why? How could you say, this guy succeeded in what he wanted to do, but he's a weak guy? No, characters are strong, but we never said, we need more strong male character, or this is a strong male character, or this is a weak male character. We never said that, but we have that caveat for women. Strong female character. Again, it means absolutely nothing. And it's ridiculous to continue to hear that being spouted. But again, that translates as having the strength that is associated with men. A woman who is a protector, and a woman who is a provider, and a woman who doesn't need a guy. But I remind you how much media is centered around either a romantic element with the guy, like it's the story about the guy, but there's almost always a romantic element in there, or even that the guy is doing it for the gal. for the gal. Like that is a prevalent thing in many, many stories. And it resonates with the guy because again, there are very few things in life worth doing for then, okay, that came out awkward, but there are very few motivators as strong as doing something for someone you love. And arguably the love that a man has for a woman is one of the strongest kinds. There's multiple kinds of love. This whole love is love thing is very bizarre because that's like saying all love is exactly the same and it's manifested in the exact same way. And it's not. But I would say that the love that a man has for a woman is a very, and arguably for a woman for a man, but that's a very strong bond. It's a very compelling force. And so it drives a lot of stories. And so this whole, this rejection of men and needing a man or being, in love with a man or having that kind of relationship and that being antithetical to what a woman is very bizarre. But the idea, getting back to the feminism, that women don't need men. I mean, men aren't running out there saying, oh, yes, you do need us. But the reality is, and that was the other thing too, when you look at things that are going on, particularly in other countries where women and children are being victimized, particularly, and you go, where are the men? Well, they've been told they're not needed. They've been told that strong, independent women, they can handle themselves. They're being told that on a daily basis by women, by media. And so when poo hits the fan, they go, well, they can handle it, right? We are assured, especially if you're younger. You're my age, you kind of know better. You're like, well, hopefully they figure it out or, they get it straight, but I'm not necessarily going to wait for them to go, oh, help, to come to our aid if there's a situation that calls for it, because that would be kind of spiteful, to be like, well, I know you need help, but I'm going to ignore you because you have your cake and eat it too. But men are getting to that point. They're like, you know what? Fine. You want to be strong and independent? Because I mean, that's the other thing too. They're like, that's very frustrating as a guy to look at. And this is actually a point that I wanted to get to. So hopefully if you lasted this long, we'll see if I still have yet to raise your heckles. When a real fight, and this goes back to kind of the feminist thing as well, in a real fight, you have something to lose. That is, I wouldn't call it the nature of a fight, but that is organic to a fight. When you fight, you have something to lose, whether it's your health, whether it's your freedom, whether it's your life, whether it's status. There's any number of things you can lose in a fight. But a real fight means that there are stakes and that if you lose, there is something of you that is going to be lost. If you don't have that, it's not a fight. So again, talking about like, oh, we're going to, women vote. What did you have to lose? You weren't going to lose more rights. And again, that's not to say you shouldn't have asked for it or shouldn't have done whatever, but that wasn't really fighting for your rights. What did you stand to lose? What were the consequences of you saying, let us have the right to vote? And I could be wrong. Maybe they were getting locked up and thrown in prison and silenced and beaten. I don't know. I haven't heard that. And I imagine in the culture that we have today, we would be hearing about that kind of stuff. But I mean, being told, shut up, or you're wrong, or knock it off, woman, like, I don't call that something to lose. That's just, okay, we're being shut down, but we'll rise up again. We're going to continue to push. So there is perseverance. There definitely are qualities in there, but that's not a fight. And a fight, however it manifests, it means you have something to lose. So right now, we're watching, again, the men and women sports. And as men, or at least as a man, I'm sitting there going, why this whole thing has been going on for 2 or 3 years. I think it's 2 or 3 years now, at least 2 years. This gets nipped in the bud on day one if the women go, no, we're not going to compete. We're just not going to do it. Because it's and here's the thing, it's abuse, it's unfair, meaning it takes away the entire point of a competition. The competition is making all things as fair as possible. Who is the better competitor? It's abusive because it is bringing greater power and strength into this by exponential factors. Like, I mean, what was it? Somebody won a race by like 7 seconds, I think it was the other day. 7 seconds, like races are usually, it's like microseconds, maybe sometimes a second or something. 7 seconds, 3 seconds, even 2 seconds in a race, swimming or running. That's obscene. Like, well, I don't know about obscene. Maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's not typical. It's usually you're talking very, very, the margin of victory is usually very slim. So you have 3, 4, 5, 7 seconds between them. That there's no competition there. That is not competitive. So you say, you know what, this is, it is, and especially when you have sports that involve physical altercations or impact or whatever. Like with volleyball, I mean, volleyball isn't a contact sport, but you still had a woman go down with I believe it was a concussion and some other severe things by getting hit really hard by a guy playing against women. So you say, okay, this is abusive. It's potentially very harmful and it's unfair, but I'm going to compete anyway. Why? Because I don't want to be called a name. I don't want to lose my scholarship. I don't want somehow, the workplace is going to completely shut me out and I'm going to get blacklisted from all jobs because I've made this stand. If you don't have something to lose, it's not a fight. This is a fight. And what we're seeing by and large, now there have been, I don't know about plenty, but we've seen teams and we have seen individuals stand up and go, no, they haven't competed. They've written letters. I think there have even been lawsuits. There are women who are standing up for themselves. But by and large, this whole thing is continuing to go because, and I see in the comments, what do you expect them to give up their scholarship? Do you expect them? It's a fight. You do have something to lose in a fight. And the stakes can be high. And yes, it's easier. Certainly, I acknowledge it is easier as a guy to be sitting here going, hey, like I understand it's a lot to sacrifice, or it can be a lot to sacrifice, depending. Because if every woman did it and just went, no, we're not going to do it, how long would it last? Like universities are not going to just have every single team just forfeit and be okay with that and just have one guy come out there. It has to change. It forces change. And they can say whatever, oh, no scholarships, no nothing. Well, then women's sports just go away because no women are willing to compete when there's a man involved. And I guarantee you when push comes to shove, the university is going to give because they've got money invested in those programs. There's a lot of, and there's going to be a lot of pressure. You're just like, oh, wait, suddenly you're not going to have women's sports? What? No scholarships? Like the cascading effect of that is no bueno for the universities and for the school systems. So women say no. And yes, you may have to put up with being called mean names. I'm sorry. I mean, I've been called mean names far back as I can remember, probably, kindergarten for crying. So as early as I had to stand at a bus stop, there was name calling, there was derision, there were, mean things said. And I'm sorry, online bullying, you don't have to engage in online stuff. And look, we don't need to get off on that whole topic. I'm not trying to diminish it. That's kind of my point is that doesn't mean that there's not a sacrifice. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be very unpleasant. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be frightening to a degree, but you can't have courage without fear. If you're not afraid, you're not courageous. You can be fearless, but not courageous. Courageous requires you to be, I'm afraid, but I'm doing this in spite of that fear. So you want to be courageous. You want to be strong. You want to have some degree of independence, meaning you're not relying on the school system. You're not relying on whoever. You're standing on your own 2 feet saying, no, I do not agree with this. I don't care what you call me. I don't care what you take from me. This is wrong. Period. Like there is no gray matter here. There's not gray matter. There's no gray. There's no ambiguity here. This is a wrong thing. I do not want this perpetrated on women in the future. And I don't want it to be perpetrated on me. Like the people that are coming up after me, I'm going to take a stand and say no. And it doesn't require you to actually do anything. You don't have to march. You don't have to throw stuff. You don't have to sign petitions. You just don't participate. You just sit down. It's the same thing with, gamers today. They're like, oh, there's certain games they don't like. And, they're disappointed by the quality of them and everything, but they buy them anyway. And it's like, look, if you want things to change, all you have to do is stop buying. It doesn't require you to make a stand. You don't have to boycott. You have to get out there and say, oh, well, I don't like it. You shouldn't do it either. No, just leave that alone. Just don't buy it. Just save yourself $70. And if enough people do that, companies will eventually either they'll get the message or they'll go broke. I'm not going to say the saying because it's so tired at this point, but we have in this day and age, power is very, it's kind of easy to come by in certain ways. Like the market is a powerful thing. If you don't participate, it can be a powerful thing. Now, granted, it has to be everybody, but you get enough people that stand up, you get a core group, 3 or 4 gals that say, no, we're not going to do it. You might get some other ones who may be dragging their feet, but going, okay, yeah, sure. You know what? They're stepping up. I'll do it. No problem with that. And look, like I said, I'm not throwing stones because right now in this particular moment in history, I'm not being called upon to risk something, to fight for something. That's just not, it's not a thing for me to do, but understanding that there may be a time for that. And I need to have the measure. And I mean, to a degree, kind of that, when we had, take something that you may or may not, believe in or agree with, or lose your job. Now, fortunately, it never came down to that. But before I told my boss, I said, I don't know what our company's ultimately going to decide, but if they decide this is going to be mandatory, I'm done. Because this is a decision that I made for myself, regardless of whether you agree with it or not. This is a decision that I am comfortable with, that I can live with. And I'm not going to make a decision that I feel compromises that, not on principle, just literally, if I make this decision and this is what I feel is right and I'm wrong, well, then I have nobody to blame but myself, and I have to take that lump. If I cave to public pressure, social pressure, and I end up being wrong, well, how horrible is that? Now, I really can't point the finger because I was the one who made the decision, but I did it. It's a really dirty feeling because it's like, well, I didn't really want to, but you did. But you made the decision. You didn't want to, but you did it anyway because you caved. It's like, I can live with myself if I make the wrong decision. I can't live with myself if I any way I'm negatively impacted by doing this. And I can point and say, well, these people kind of made me, or they tried to coerce me, or they tried to do this. But ultimately I had the power to say no. And yeah, it could have cost me my job, but I'm going to do it anyway. But anyway, that's a small thing, but it may come into place where I have to do that. But right now, bottom line, what I'm saying is I'm hearing, we get this messaging, strong, independent, oh, women, we can do this. We can fight. We're fighters. And I'm not saying all women are like this or that there aren't exceptions, but what I'm seeing displayed, at least in this particular arena, is a lack of willing to fight. And it's not even necessarily, there may be some physical elements involved, but I would say, depending on the sport, there may be more risk of you actually participating and being physically injured than not doing it. But to say, as a group, to stand and say, no, this is not okay. Like, you could say, well, the legal system's letting us down, or the authority of the school is letting us down. You can't rely on that. If it's been compromised, you're making a stand against something. But like I said, it comes down to, it's not a fight if you don't have something to lose. And so to say, well, what do you expect them to sacrifice this? I'm like, well, that's what a fight is. And that's why, earlier when I was saying about the nature of fighting, like, I'm not going to fight for something trivial. I'm not going to fight over something petty. And that's, I don't know if this is, I even need to do this. But I guess it ties into the whole, the power fantasy to a degree. Is this really worth doing right now? I might as well just go and do it. So here's the thing. So Superman 2, I have said, and I might get into this in another video, Superman 2 is, to me, the biggest bastardization of Superman's character ever. First of all, this whole idea, and I won't go too far into it, but the idea that, it's Superman, it's all about his character and his nobility and his heart and his truth, justice and blah, blah, blah. Superman 2 blows that out of the water because he gives up his powers to be with Lois. I don't know why that had to happen. I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen in the comics, but for whatever reason in this movie, in order to at least bed Lois, he had to give up his Kryptonian nature and just become a normal, you will become like a normal man. You will be like them and blah, 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 Marlon Brando. And so he has to give all that up, and he's totally willing to do it. And the very first thing that happens, they go away from the Fortress of Solitude and they go to a diner. And this is what happens.
Right.
And so we're going to play a little bit and then pause it. So here we go. So notice, oops, crapola.
I'll think about it when I get back.
I did the wrong thing.
Second eggs, Annie. Don't
Can I have my
forget some
Coke?
coffee.
Yeah, coming right up.
What? Oh,
Sorry,
pause.
that's
There we
his
go.
take.
Okay, so notice in this scene, Clark Kent, we'll call him. Clark Kent doesn't order, doesn't sit down. He walks right past the seat, goes into the restroom. Okay, Lois is sitting there. This guy, trust, we get the. Again, the guy is leering at her. He's an unsavory guy. We know that. I think even if you see earlier in the video or in the scene, he comes in and the way the gal behind the counter kind of rolls her eyes, like he's a jerk, and he's definitely not being very polite or respectful. He's making a pass at Lois, and he's continuing to make a pass here. Clark does see it, but she says, "No, I'm not interested." And you see that shrug. He's done. Okay. He's done. Now, if he was continuing to push on as Clark walks over and maybe he's going to, come on, baby, he's trying to get a little more forceful, but she pretty much says, no, thank you. He's like, all right, you're a loss. So again, he's a jerk. We all know jerks are all over the place, but he's done. He's done his jerky thing. He's going back to eating.
Excuse me, sir. I think you're sitting in my seat.
And so now, Clark, actually, excuse me, sir, you're in my seat. You're in my seat. Now, nothing wrong with saying that initially. Excuse me, sir, I was sitting there. He said, I think it's buzz off 4 eyes or something.
Oh.
Okay. And I know there's going to be people pissed off about this. This is not worth fighting over. This is not something worth fighting over. It's a jerk. He sat in your seat. It wasn't like you had your plate there and you're in the middle of your meal. You stepped away for a second. He comes in and pushes your plate away. He sits there. You say you're in my seat. He's like, screw you. I think he says screw you for. I can't hear what he has to say. But if you look, let's see if we can get another angle here.
I think perhaps somebody ought to teach you some manners, sir.
I hate that line. Okay, well, you can't see it. Shoot.
Yeah.
Where is it? Well, you'll be able to see in a second. There's nothing but empty seats. This isn't like these are the last 2 seats in the diner. There is nothing but a row of empty seats. Clark could have easily said, come on, Lois. Looks like there's more hospital. Looks like there's, better people down there. Looks like there's friendlier people down there. And you may be going, oh, that's chicken. That's not standing up. Again, big difference. If this guy was encroaching, he was making Lois uncomfortable. He's pushing in. He's continuing to advance on her. And Clark steps in and says, hey, knock it off. And he's like, no, man, get out of here. I'm taking this gal. Something like that. Totally fine. That's when you need to step in. That is defending. That is protecting. This is a case of a jerk. We all know jerks. They cut in line. They do whatever. You've got a choice here. Are you going to, what I would say, be the bigger man and go, you know what, this is not worth an altercation over. And what Clark just said there, you need to be taught some manners. Excuse me, sir, step outside. I'm going to teach you some manners. You're a jerk. You're a meanie weenie. And I'm going to teach you that you're a jerk by punching you in the face. Like that's what we've boiled the nobility, the noble heart and the justice of Superman. Is this such a grave injustice that this man is not giving up a seat that you never even sat in? And there's a plethora of perfectly good stools right down the way. This is the hill that you're going to die on. This is what you're going to throw down with. Because here's the thing. Like I said, in a fight, you got something to lose. If you win, who knows what happens? Maybe the guy goes into his truck and gets a shotgun or a knife and comes back at you. Maybe he has some friends that you don't see that are around the corner or somewhere in there. And when you and your gal leave, they jump your butt because they're pissed off at you. But let's say that's not even the case. Maybe you break your hand on the guy's face. You break some of your fingers. Got to go to the hospital now. Is the gal going to be like, oh, my dream guy, you stood up to that jerk. Boy, howdy. I don't think that's worth it. But that's if you win. What if you lose? You're not Superman anymore. And it feels like he's on a power trip. Like he still thinks, like if he was Superman, that's the really scary part here. If he was Superman, he has no problem going, well, I'm going to teach you some manners. I'm going to rough you up. And we know what happens at the very end of the movie. And as a child, when I watched this, I was like, yeah, Superman, yeah, very cathartic. It's the bully and he teaches the bully a lesson. But as an adult, you look at it and go, he went in there, he picked a fight. He walks into the diner at the very end. I don't have a clip of it. He walks in and says the same line, excuse me, sir, you're in my seat, acts all timid and everything. The guy punches him in the stomach. Clark didn't go work out because at the end, he's like, oh, yeah, I went and worked out. He didn't earn it. He just got his freaking powers back. He became one with the sun. He got a super, Kryptonian, whatever, osmosis thing that happens with him and the sun. And he didn't earn it. He didn't learn how to fight. He didn't work out. He literally just got superpowers back, goes in and picks a fight with the guy, knowing that he could lay him out. The guy punches him, hurts his hand. Clark picks him up, slams him down on a tray, spins him around and sends him down. And again, then he's like, oh, working out. Oh, here's the money for the damage. Like, how petty is that? That's justice. That's truth. That's what Superman. You mean to tell me, Superman, that there wasn't somebody who could have used your help back in Metropolis while you're off getting your petty little revenge against this doofus? But anyway, so we see what he would have done if he had his powers, but he doesn't have his powers now. So this noble, amazing character decides this is the injustice. I need to teach you a lesson, sir. And so he calls him out. And again, like I said, even if he wins, he doesn't really win. He's going to have a broken hand. He's going to have some injury here. And again, all because he didn't want to say, all right, Lois, let's go and sit down here and sit, between him and like have himself on the end and Lois over there, 4 stools down. She's inside. Doesn't have to worry about that. You know what? We don't need to be around a jerk. Let's just leave the jerk to his stool. You can make a little bit of argument if it was a full bar, but we're going to see that's not the case.
Honey?
And she even said, if I'm not mistaken, again, I can't hear it, but if she even said, Clark, we can just go. This is pride. This is stupid, imbecilic pride right here. Golly day. So, it's like, and her going like, this is not, because if a gal needs protecting, she's not going to say, oh, don't worry about it, or we can just leave. Like, she's looking out for him as well. Like, it's not just hey, you're a bullet sponge for me. Hey, you stand in the way and take whatever's coming at me. No, she cares about him as well. She doesn't want to see him get hurt or go through some traumatic event. So she's like, no, okay, we this isn't worth fighting over. Voice of reason here. This is not worth sacrificing for. And if she can say that, if she has the wherewithal to say that and the ability to say that and the will to say that, then chances are it's not a situation that really demands this kind of response.
Sir, would you care to step outside?
Clark.
I said, excuse me, sir, would you care to step outside?
I don't remember what he said there. But again, you can kind of see here, completely empty counter. This isn't like, okay, we can't eat here now because he's here. But yeah, so yeah. And then you got guys looking down there. You get quite a ways away. We're going to pause it again here because I don't know how far we can go with it.
But right up.
And the guy plays dirty. He's like, okay, yeah, you want to fight, whatever, sure. I don't think we need to. He's like, I think he says after you, pretty much. And then Clark turns his back. And yeah, of course the guy's a scumbag. Pushes into the guy. Okay, so right there's your lesson. You pick a fight with a guy. Again, Clark thinks he's some big tough guy there. Excuse me, sir, I'm going to teach you a lesson. He's like, all right, sucker, after you. And he pushes the guy. This is what you get when you pick a fight with somebody. You never know what's going to happen.
Clark!
And there he goes. And here's the thing. Okay, so Clark, I'm bleeding. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm putz now. I don't have all my power stuff. Life is a lot harder when you don't have your powers. Okay. Now, pride comes up. Now, here's the thing. What does he do? Look at this. What the hell is that? You get up. A guy that just punched you down. You get up. If you're going to get up at all, you come in swinging. Like, look, if you really want to win this fight, you get up and you just walk over to the guy and you deck him or you push him off the chair or something. You don't just get up and stand next to the guy. That's like, hey, do it again, man. Yeah, see? I mean, like, what is this imbecilic behavior? There you go. That's what you get. You just stood there like an idiot with your hands by your side. You're not prepared for a fight. You just got taken down. You stand there like a dumbass. And that's what you get. And boom, punch to the stomach, punch to the face. And see, this is indicative. This is what happens, guys. This is what happens. When I said it starts with the guys, when you forfeit, now this is not him forfeiting, this is just him getting his butt kicked. But when you fail to protect, typically in I'm too scared. Notice, Clark says, hey, we're moving down there. None of this happens. Lois doesn't have to jump. He doesn't get knocked out. Lois doesn't have to jump in. This is a stupid fight to pick. When a guy is incapable of protection, the woman is naturally going to feel like she needs to do something. Now, some women would cower. Lois Lane is a bit more feisty, and she's going to try. And I don't know what happens. So yeah, he pulls her off without, like, she's trying. He's not. Okay, and see, there was restraint there, and I don't know what he said, but he looked like he wanted to swipe at her. Now she's yanking his hair out. Like, there was some pain there. Obviously, it's not the end of the world, but the guy pulled her off. She's not a threat. And yeah, the guy looked like he was going to strike her. He didn't. I'm not saying that makes him a good guy, but I'm just saying, like, okay, he wrestled her off, but he wasn't throwing he could have thrown elbows. I mean, right here, if you wanted to, she's right there. Okay. She's got his his hair. He could just take his arms down and wham right in the back and just, it would have sent her sprawling and probably destroyed her stomach or something. But, he's just kind of wrestling with her. And then, yeah, he has this moment. Again, the guy's a jerk. He's an absolute jerk. And he's like, oh, yeah, boy, you're not worth it, whatever. And there's Clark. There's Superman. Let me teach you some manners, sir. That's what you get. And that is Superman without his powers. Is that something we admire? Is that something we look at and go, oh, yeah, that's awesome. Why? Well, it's his truth and justice and his sense of duty. No, that's a stupid, prideful dick move that a guy that just in complete ignorance and stupidity makes, and that's the price that he pays for it. And right after this, goes back crying to mom and dad. Oh, Father! And then he finds a green crystal, which looks like it's kryptonite, but it gives him his powers back. So we get a brief moment, the briefest of moments where you separate Clark Kent from his powers, and there's nothing admirable about him. In fact, he makes the stupidest decision. Now, I'm not saying this is typical Superman. I'm not saying that this is what Superman is. I'm just saying Superman 2, very popular. Well, I don't know about popular movie, but it was not considered one of the bad movies. I think it started with Superman 3 and 4 were considered bad movies. But I think this does Superman dirty more than anything else. It makes him petty and foolish. And look, there are some guys, like, there are guys out there that will fight you because say something about their mother, or you call them a name. They're that weak that all it takes is you calling them a name and they will come after you. They will try to commit violence, whether it means that they get their butts kicked or whether it means that they get, like, honestly, if let's say Clark had actually decked this guy, he said, excuse me, sir, step outside. They go outside and Clark is able to gives him a punch to the gut and punches him in the face and punches him again. And the guy goes down, he's bleeding and everything. And the guy says, you know what, screw this noise. He calls the cops. Cops show up, says, what happened here? He said, this guy punched me in the face, busted my lip and broke a tooth out. I'm actually missing a tooth here. This is going to require lots of dental work. And it says, turns to Clark and says, sir, well, was that what happened? He said, yes, sir. I punched him in the face. Well, why'd you do that? Well, he sat in my seat. I'm sorry, what? Well, he sat in my seat. And he wouldn't get up. And, well, I needed to teach him some manners because you just don't sit in somebody's seat. Okay, did he make any moves, any aggression? No, I told him to come outside so that I could punch him in the face. And he came outside. Now, you could certainly say that if because he agreed to it, Clark just didn't deck him in cold blood. That okay, it was a fight. But if the guy didn't even throw a punch, he could say anything. Now there would be bystanders or witnesses or what have you. But I mean, it does get like you can't defend that. And like I said, there are definitely people out there that think that they have to defend their honor, blah blah blah, whatever. But for me personally, I'm gonna fight if somebody's like actual well-being or life is on the line. And if I do, it's going to be like no holds barred because I'm fighting for my life. I'm fighting for somebody else's life. So it's going to be dirty as heck. It's not going to be clean. And that doesn't mean I'm going to win. I'm not trying to say like, oh, if you don't want to see me when I'm angry. It's not even being angry. It's like, it's a survival thing. That's really the only time it's worth fighting for. But, in that regard, when it comes to like a fist fight, but like in terms of, society, in terms of standing up for something, if you don't have something to lose, it ain't a fight. And it just seems like we've had this inundation. And again, I am not claiming to know for a fact or to say this is the way society should be, and this is the role that men should have and women should have, and this is what men and women shouldn't be able to do, and there shouldn't be female superheroes, or there shouldn't be this. I'm not saying any of that because I don't ultimately know what can be gathered, what can be gleaned, what the benefits are, what the downside is. All I know is the first female superhero that really, got traction. Like I said, there was another one. Let's see here, just out of curiosity. First female superhero. Oh, let me take this sad sack off the screen here. Phantoma transforming from Jungle Comics, March 1941. So she preceded, as it says, Wonder Woman's first appearance, first superhero, but nobody has really heard anything of her. She looks okay. No, I wasn't. She doesn't look okay. I'm saying she looks and then okay. So looks like we can see why she didn't catch on. Phantoma, the most remarkable woman that ever lived. I mean, maybe they use that language in Superman 2, the most amazing man that ever lived, but it's just like, it can't just be, a very strong woman in her own right or something. No, it's the most remarkable woman that ever lived. So not a woman who, what was it, helped discover radiation or cure cancer or whatever else, made some kind of contribution, not some literary contributor. No. The most remarkable woman is this Phantoma, devoted her supernatural powers to protecting the jungle and the untold millions of jungle born. Okay, so apparently there's untold millions of, apparently women jungle born. As he gloats, the raging phantom appears. In her rage, she begins to change form. Or your time has arrived. The change is completed. Now you will pay a dreadful penalty. So here we go, folks. Here we go. I would point you to Exhibit A. This is a woman who looks like she's built like a dude. And she becomes incredibly unappealing upon her transformation. And this is my first time hearing about her. I read about her earlier today when I was doing a little bit of research for this. This is the first time I've actually seen it. And again, as you can see, she's built like a dude, as powerful as a dude, surely. And she's got this really nasty skull face thing. So, that didn't really catch on. The whole, woman with a man's powers thing didn't really work out. So we had to go to Wonder Woman and this whole hybrid thing. So, but it begs the question, like this is a very manipulative, very twisted, again, I'm going to bring eroticism into the picture through bondage and submission. I'm going to cultivate a sense of eroticism in my young male readers to educate them on what it's like to be dominated by a woman to the point that you would be willing to be her slave. The allure of a woman with all the power of a man. So I would say we guys, like being exposed to that kind of nonsense didn't do us any favors. And this whole concept of, even whether it's real life or fantasy going, oh yeah, we want a woman who acts like a dude. Don't understand it. And I've gotten further along and we're hearing it more and more now. That's the thing. That's why I said at the very beginning, I said, things are manifesting. Things are becoming more stark because the deception is off. The subtlety is off. You start hearing guys say, I'm sick of, like, what they call a girl boss. I'm sick of seeing these girls, these 5'2", 5'6", 120 pound, 120 pound. I don't know what the actual dimensions are, soaking wet, taking on these big beefy guys. Well, they've been doing it. They just did it with powers, but you can tell they don't have powers. They don't embody strength. They don't embody power because that's not attractive. That's not what men appreciate about women. That's not what men desire in a woman. They don't want a woman who looks like a dude. They don't want a woman who looks like a man. And so you say, okay, but then why do you fantasize about the powers? Why do you fantasize about a woman having the power? And I would say it could be traced back to bullshit like this. Sorry. Well, this is not exactly a kid-friendly deal anyway, but it does. It really gets under my skin. It's this kind of nonsense, this twisted root of a character where the creator himself is going, I'm purposely trying to propagandize this idealistic woman that somehow has power, but we still make her alluring and feminine. We want to have the best of both worlds because women don't have value. We as a society, in his words, and his feminist women that he lives with, we don't value women for their female virtues, for their own virtues. We need to give them, instill in them what we consider to be masculine and male virtues. And we're going to use all these kinds of tactics, these, again, submission, bondage, submission, eroticism, to make that an attractive thing for men. So not all female heroines have such a grotesque origin story or origin, coming from the creator guy, but this is pretty messed up. And I'm going to say a lot of guys, I grew up with Wonder Woman to a degree. This goes back to the 1940s, but even, child of the 80s, it was there. Why is it that we think women need to be superheroes? Why is it? And then they're saying, we need more of them. There needs to be more representation of women. And why? Why do we want more women acting like men? Why do we want more women going, I'm going to protect men? Why are we going to fantasize and fetishize powers in a woman when we don't actually want to see a woman in power? We want to see a sexy woman in, for lack of a better term. Granted, there are some characters that, comic book characters, whatever, who aren't necessarily dressed provocateur or as provocateurs, but the good chunk of them are. And like I said, it's for men as well. But again, as a guy, it was not a provocative thing. It was just a showing the pure muscle and pure strength of a man as a protector. So again, just ask yourself that disparity. Don't want her to look like a man. Don't want her to have the physicality of a man who is strong. Want her to have somehow this power, this might and force equal to, or if not more so than a man. But we still want her to look feminine and not look like a powerful woman. So, like I said, and I know heckles go up, but I just think that is very indicative as essentially the first mainstream superheroine. I think it's a poisoned well is my point. And I just don't, I look at it and go, I don't know that I want to see. And look again, and this is another, my final blow that is going to definitely win me no friends. The WNBA. I mean, it just goes to, like, yes, it's women playing for women high level basketball compared to a men's basketball game. To me personally, I'm not saying this is for everybody. I don't look at it and go, it's women playing, I'm not interested. I look at it and go, I want to see good basketball. I don't see good basketball in women's basketball. There are some players here and there that there are definitely some good plays, and there are some good players. But compared to men's basketball, no competition. I will say personally, as somebody who's not like, and I didn't play basketball like super competitively, but I played enough where like I get the game and I was okay at it. You know, certainly not, like I said, nowhere in the upper echelons of athleticism there. But like volleyball, I can watch, you know, whether it's women's indoor or outdoor, women's volleyball to me is just as interesting to watch as men because they're still hitting the ball really well. You know, maybe not as hard, but I can follow. Same thing with tennis. Like I can, it's still to me going, wow, that's an impressive level of prowess. But if you know the sport really well, comparatively still, you're going, you know, the men's sport is better. And so again, it's not, you can't play the sport, but why in a world where I could choose and say, okay, I want to have 5 superheroes. Why would I choose a woman to be a superhero when it could be a guy who's going to do it better? Because that is that. And I understand what you're saying. In the fantasy world, they have their powers because they get it from some other source. You know, it's not, well, she's not a normal woman. She's enhanced by powers. But again, when men get enhanced by gamma radiation or whatever, they become bulkier. They become stronger. Now, to be fair, I just realized, I guess, Mr. Fantastic, Captain Fantastic, the Fantastic guy, Reed Richards, he doesn't really bulk. He's got a little bit of bulk, but he doesn't really, because he's loosey guy. He's stringly man, whatever he's called. So, and I already mentioned Spider-Man is kind of a caveat. He's definitely more of a leaner build, but typically it is the manifestation of that power is in the physique. And like I said, why it is fantasy, understandable. And so you say, well, just like the Force, you know, it's like, okay, could there be female Jedi? Sure, because they're tapping into a force that isn't there, that doesn't actually require them to be stronger or what have you. So that's why I'm saying it's not a universal thing. And I mean, Tolkien, you've got warrior women in there. In real life, as I said, we have warrior women, but I would say that's on the other end of the bell curve. And that, again, is not something I'm going, oh, that's awesome. Oh, man, a warrior woman. That's what I'm totally about. I'm okay with it, but it's like, okay, you know, okay, it's fine. It's fine. So that's what I'm saying. To say that things should or shouldn't be a certain way, or that something is wrong or bad, I can say this is messed up. I can't say that. Whatever you want to say about the character after that, since her origins, her creator, no bueno in terms of what he's trying to do, as far as I'm concerned. But after everything after that, is it bad to have female characters? But getting back to what I was saying, we are in this time. Men are kind of getting and women. When I read the comment section, now granted, you have bots and everything, but you know, women are like, as a woman, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see a girl boss. I don't want to see a Mary Sue. I don't want to see a woman beating up a bunch of dudes. It's pathetic. It's boring. It's not what I want to see. You know, so it's, and again, that may be a small portion of maybe most females want to see that. But when you take away the illusion that it's empowering, and let me make a distinction, because I've had 3 people in the comment sections come back and say, well, women, you know, but women can be very inspirational, and they can, you know, or the superheroes are very inspirational, and they can make you, you know, want to be a better person and aspire to blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you just talked about inspiration. And I would say still being inspired by a hero, superhero, like, again, Superman without the powers to enact his nobility and his niceness and his, you know, being a champion of justice, without the physical power to do that, next to worthless. There's plenty of guys with a good heart, with good intentions, with nobility of spirit, who are willing to sacrifice, willing to, you know, to do the right thing and stand up for what's right. Plenty of guys are willing to do that. not all of them, most of them don't have the wherewithal to impose that in any significant level or to manifest that in any significant way. It is the power that is given to the character that enables the application of those noble things that we find fascinating, that we like, that we go, oh, I really would like to be that. My imagination was inspired by Superman. Oh my gosh, he has what coming out of his eyes? He's got what coming out of his where? Like, he's got all this kind of stuff. He's got like this giant list, 20 some powers that he can do. Like, it makes your imagination go wild. It's like, well, you think of all the cool stuff. And I remember sitting with friends, asking if you could only have one superpower, what would it be? And well, this power would be really cool. And then when the X-Men came out, and they even broadened that even more, and they had telepathy, and then you had teleportation and absorbing, and then healing factors and cool claws, and you have all this extra stuff that kind of spread out. But so it inspires that. But I don't look at Superman and go, he makes me want to stand up for what's right, because I'm like, well, he's standing up for what's right, and bullets are bouncing off his chest. I would be gunned down in a heartbeat. That's not a fight I'm willing to pick. He can pick a fight. Superman can pick a fight. I'm not saying he should, like in that case there. He's not saying he should pick a fight with everybody, but he could pick a fight with a lot bigger opponents and a lot, bigger instances of injustice, because he can handle all of that. I can't. So it's I wouldn't say it's not inspiring, but it's not necessarily something that I latch onto. But, I ask you, you hear people say, oh, Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot and her, her woman, we love that Wonder Woman and she's empowering for all women. So when women need to actually make a stand for themselves, not for anybody else, really, for themselves, and say, for my own safety, for my own well-being, and for not only my career, ultimately, because here's the thing, if you get disqualified because let's just, you got to come in top 3 or something, and there are 3 guys competing, they take all the top spots, you don't get to move on anyway. So it's not real competition. It's a fake, false competition. And you say, well, for the sake of the competition of the game, the purity of the game, for the sake of my future possible career and being able to actually do anything with it, and for all the women who are going to come up behind me, I'm going to take a stand and say, no, I'm not giving into this. And you can call me names. You can pull my scholarship. We can go to law about that if we need to. Maybe there's a court case for that. I don't know. But you can, and it may very well be temporary, where they say, okay, we want you back now. We're willing to pay. But that's the thing. You put your foot down, you say no. And yeah, no, you call me a phobe or whatever else. Don't care. Your words have no meaning. I'm standing for what's right. And if that means that I get mocked, if that means I get derided, in theory, again, it's a team. If you stand as a team, you move as a team, you make those moves as a team. I'm not saying it's easy. As I said, if it's a fight, it means if it's not a fight, if you don't have something to lose, you may have a lot to lose, but you have a lot more to lose by not standing up and by letting this continue and continue and continue and continue, waiting for somebody else to step in. And look, if we were in a society right now where we said, women look to men to make things right. Women look to men to protect them and to protect their rights and protect what they have. Then you get the men coming in there and saying, get this guy out of here. Like, I mean, I don't know exactly what men would do, because we can't force you to stop playing. We can't tell you to stop boycotting. There can be laws put in there, but like, at least you would have men going to bat, men going, like, fathers writing in there, hey, like, again, it gets a little messy, because like I said, really the power lies with these gals, because they're the ones affected. So what could guys do in this particular case? Kind of eating my words here a little bit. I'm going, I don't know, but I can tell you right now, guys are being told, no, strong, independent women, they don't need a guy. They can handle it. Doesn't look like it. There are definitely, as I said, there have been women who stood up and have stood up for themselves and have forfeited games and said, screw it. But it didn't take, like, they stood out. They put themselves at risk. Now, again, I don't think any of those gals have been harmed. Maybe they've been threatened. I'm sure they've been called names, but like, they're still okay. And there was another team, I think, that was called, transphobic or something. And they ended up winning the championship because they ended up beating the team that had the one player on there. It doesn't mean that player should have been on there. That guy should have been playing, but they were able to prevail regardless in a team sport. Oh no, I don't think they beat, I don't know if they lost. I think they forfeited to that team, or they lost to that team. I don't remember, but they ultimately won the championship. But anywho, that to say, it's not just it's the end of the world. But when you are not used to actually fighting for something, and arguably shouldn't have to, but that's the world we live in right now. And I would argue that the only reason why we're at this point is because too many guys ceded the ground. And by seceded, gave up the ground. Too many guys forfeited and said, okay, yeah, no, it's right. Women should be able to do this. And I'm not saying women's sports. I'm talking about the fact that we've gotten to the point where you have people in authority in these schools and in these other places that have said, yes, men can compete in women's sports. Those are not men. Putting it this way, not in terms of anatomy. So I don't want to confuse the topic any more. So they are not behaving as men. As I said, men protect women. Men who throw women to the wolves, men who subject women to that kind of thing, they're not behaving as men. They're not behaving with the integrity of a man. They're not behaving as a man should. And for them to be in a position of leadership, for them to have that mentality at all, shows a gross short-sightedness in our society. So it now needs to be fixed. It needs to be corrected. And it slowly seems to be, but it is not, as I'm seeing, by a plethora of strong, independent women going, we're going to do this. And I would say, as I got to it, I don't know off the top of my head what a man could do to fix it if they wanted to step in, aside from like fathers. But again, he would say, look, I don't want you competing. If they're not going to fix this. But I mean, there probably are avenues. I'm not trying to spitball on that. But all I'm saying is I feel like we have this convergence where we're having guys and gals go, this whole girl punch pow pow thing is kind of getting old. We're seeing women being portrayed in comics without the feminine allure, and they're being made to look like the men that kind of they should look like based on the whole becoming powerful thing. And guys are going, nah, I'm not really digging on that. We've got instances here. And then, like I said, overseas, we've got men and women being targeted specifically. And a lot of guys are letting it happen. You watch this. It was a video. Again, I'm not going to call the country or whatever out, but you got this woman. She's not a police officer, but she's kind of like a social worker. She kind of looks like a cop, but she doesn't have apparently the authority. And there's a guy coming at her, like he's threatening coming at her, and she's backpedaling as fast as she can. She's calling for backup, and she's, help, I got a guy, whatever. And she's running from this guy pretty much. And while trying to, still facing him, he's just marching and walking by all these people. And finally a guy steps in between her, kind of puts his hand on the chest, is like, and starts talking. We don't know what he says, but he stops the guy. And that's all it took, was a guy with an ounce of masculine tendencies to step in and be like, dude, knock it off. And it kind of shut that down. But how many men did she walk by that were just kind of like, well, whatever. And I don't think it's guys being spiteful. I think there are men that are conditioned. No, she can handle it himself. If I step in, well, then I'm just, I'm being overly aggressive. I'm being that guy, who thinks, oh, every girl's a damsel in distress, needs a big, strong man. She can handle herself. Like, there is a conditioning that has happened here. But, we're seeing things like that. We're seeing this whole dynamic of men and women's sports, men and women's spaces. And we're seeing a complete silence from feminists. Because, as I said, it is antithetical to what they believe and what they've been trying to push, which is men and women are the same. Women are just as good as men. They can do everything that men can do. They don't need men. They don't need protectors. Women can be their own protectors. They can be their own providers. Men are not necessary. To acknowledge what's going on would be antithetical to that principle, while also making a distinction and saying, yeah, okay, they're two very different things. And if they're different, it means there's a place for each of them there, and that men and women essentially, in many ways, whether it's on a personal level or societal level, need each other. And people are calling that out, going, hey, why aren't we seeing this rah fighting spirit? And so all of these things are converging, and I feel like it's just, I don't know about the right time, because I have seen plenty of blowback. So I don't know. Most of these videos don't get circulation. This is not a very popular topic on YouTube. It may get in front of 20 eyes. If it gets in front of more, oh my gosh. But, it's just something I think is worth thinking about, worth considering. And you can say, hey, here's a problem with this argument, or here's that. I'm happy, food for thought, because as I said, I haven't made up my mind on this. I'm looking at this going, okay, here's the question. Here's the root of as I said, the original female superhero And these are the psychological aspects that went into this, purposely created to have these attributes, purposely created to create these feelings and these impressions on young readers. And I think it succeeded. And I think it's been perpetuated down the line. And not all superheroes have this tainted version. And as I said, there are some, Black Cat to a degree, maybe there's somewhere it's like, okay, they've got, the what you consider feminine wiles, the femme fatale. That was your primary villains, and maybe even, I don't know if they could be like anti-heroes kind of thing, but you had that. And it was using what I said with that Jack Reacher, reference there, where it's like they're using the attributes that women do have. And as I said, it doesn't take much from a woman to shut a man down in a lot of ways. And women can use that virtue, that ability to appeal to a man's heart, to appeal to a softer, gentler nature, that can be used manipulatively in a really bad way. And guys may not feel it necessarily, but being manipulated, being undercut like that, if it goes to that direction, that starts to bring resentment. That starts to bear resentment because you're not playing fair. Like, I can't bring my physical strength to bear against you because that would just be like abusive and messed up, and that goes against my nature. But if I'm also trusting that you're not going to bring your strength and your power to bear on me in an unfair way because I can't respond to it with my strength. So it is a trust. And I think both men and women can go too far one way or the other, but ideally you have that power that women have. And I mean, and you can also see, what is it? I think, I'm not sure if this is official stat. I think it is, like, women can survive, like if they're married for, 60 years and the guy dies, women can go on for another 10, 15, 20 years. Typically when if a man's wife dies, he's gone 2, 5, however many years later. And there you could say any number of reasons for that, but I think there is, at least it indicates that men do become very attached to women, that they become, very intertwined. And that's not to say that women aren't or that they can't, but it just goes to show that there is no mentality of men that we don't need women, and that women aren't with us, so they don't have an effect. They have a huge impact. And it's a very beautiful thing when men and women come together, but we have been ostracized from each other. And we've both been told, men have been told, you need to be less masculine. Masculinity is horrible. And so you have a bunch of emasculated men, and women are being told, you need to be empowered. You're empowered by women in power. You're empowered by these fantasy characters. You're empowered by these things that have no capacity or whatever to empower you. All they do is make you feel strong and confident. And so then you overstep, you go beyond what you would normally do because you're feeling confident, and things happen. And we see that more and more, I think. Videos come out, you see the stuff on YouTube and everything. And there's now a disconnect with women going, wait a minute, me trying to be a dude, or me thinking I can do these things. Again, it doesn't mean women aren't capable and that they can't be independent, but they've been sold a bill of goods starting. I'm sure they didn't start with this, but this is certainly one point of origin where the lie was being sold. I mean, he even believed his own delusion. This is the ideal woman that should rule the world. Doesn't exist, dude. She's a fantasy. Like, you realize you just made her up. Like, and why is your ideal woman or ideal ruler as a woman, why is she only possible in fantasy? Like, that should tell you something. There's something not right there. If it can't be real, if it's not reality, then why is that considered ideal? It's one thing to say it's unrealistic in that, like I said, it's unrealistic to, what was it? There was something I was saying that was unrealistic. Well, me playing football or, professional sports was unrealistic, but, it was something that was unrealistic. Anyway, it's one thing to say, oh, well, let's just take this, for example, scalpers. This, I don't know why this pulled this out of my head, but like, in theory, you've got like game systems and games that come out, and scalpers will grab them, having no desire to play them or use them. They grab them and create a higher demand for them, decrease the supply, increase the demand, and sell them for twice what they're worth. That gets no, that's what I was talking about. like OnlyFans, prostitution, that whole thing, all that gets shut down if men stop paying for it. If there's no more on demand for men, then the women have to go find something else to do because men aren't simping for them anymore. That's not realistic. It's not impossible. It's not outside the realm of realism. It can happen. But knowing human nature, knowing men, knowing how the world works, it isn't believable. It's not a feasible thing. You would never bet that it could happen. But there's a difference between something not being feasible because of human nature and something not being feasible because it just simply can't work. It is a complete conjuration of utter fantasy. So yeah, I think I'm just I'm winding down now. I don't know if any of that resonated. As I said, just ask the questions. I mean, I made a lot of statements, but just put the pieces together. Like I said, the mask has come off, folks. The subtlety in the past 5 years, the subtlety of the messaging we've got. I stopped. I remember I said that I've been watching rom-coms. I stopped watching. You know why? I'm not going to go too deep into this because this is a whole other thing of worms, but you know, I realized, okay, there's some things that I don't watch because I say they don't align with my values. And that's fine. But then I realized, wait a minute, fornication doesn't align with my values either. Like, I don't want to watch a love story, quote unquote, between two people who meet, have this, you know, antagonistic relationship in the heat of the moment, get all hot and horny, and then they do it, and suddenly, oh, they love each other and they're together. And then they have to decide if they ever want to be together, if they want to be together. And it's like, so you commit to a relationship, you do the physical act of committing, the physical act of consummating a relationship, and then you want to decide whether or not you're supposed to be together. So I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't. Now, there are like, I would say nuances there. Like, is this being portrayed as a good thing? That this is this like Jerry Maguire. He sleeps with, what's her name, but that relationship was toxic and bad. So you go, okay, well, that's not necessarily an endorsement for this rampant sex because, you know, it ended up being, you know, craptacular. But then he ends up sleeping with Renee Zellweger's character. And, you know, Cuba Gooding Jr., Rod calls him out and is like, well, I can't, the phrase that he used, I don't want to use on here. I don't know how vulgar it would be considered, but essentially he says, did you sleep with her? And he's like, yeah. He's like, okay, you know, that's like, again, it was not meant to be a good thing. Now, not just because it was just rampant sex, because obviously it didn't matter that he was having, you know, casual sex with his fiance, but you know, at least it was, you know, a single mother. That's not something you do lightly. So at least in that way, I'm going, okay, there's a little something there, but there's a lot of rom-coms where it's like, these are just dysfunctional relationships. Like, I don't believe these relationships last past the credits. Like, thing happens. Oh, okay, they're together. The guy, you know, runs after her and, oh, I love you, whatever. They kiss, sappy music plays, roll the credits. By the time those credits end up rolling, they're broken up again because they were both dysfunctional going into it. And just because they had sex, they slept together, doesn't mean that solidified anything between them, that it made their relationship more impactful. In fact, it probably shortchanged it because now they've got this unearned intimacy that they haven't got to know each other well enough yet. And so anyway, but you know, so I was like, you know what? And it started turning me like genuinely, I wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to watch rom-coms because I'm too pure and too chaste and my morality is there. I genuinely, when I looked at it in that way, I lost interest. And I'm not going to say I was outright disgusted, but it kind of got to that point as well. It's kind of like, this is kind of messed up. Like, this doesn't align with my values either. And yeah, that doesn't mean that everything that has sex in there is something I'm not going to watch or something I think is bad or horrible. But, you know, if it's glorified and if it's the crux of what the story that I'm watching, instead of it being like an ancillary thing or, you know, whatever. Like, I mean, you know, Sarah Connor and Reese have sex in Terminator, but it's functional because that's how you get John, you know? So, and it ends up being her in the photo, you know, being pregnant or whatever. So it happens. And yes, it is a part, but it's not what the plot hangs on. It's not like, oh, this is true love. Yeah, it's okay. Guy and gal like digging each other and, you know, letting hormones get the better of them. And they find enough time to breathe as they're running away from this Terminator. They've got enough downtime to to kind of have this moment. But, you know, in its way, it's kind of tender, I guess, or whatever. I mean, you can justify it any which way, but I'm saying, but that's not like a key part of the film. And it's like, all right, well, not a fan personally, but I mean, they do it in Braveheart too. There's a brief sex scene. Now, granted, they're married, but even then, don't necessarily need to see that stuff. But again, it's not a holier than thou. It's not, oh, I'm a more pious person, or this makes me a good person, or, you know, this is how everybody should feel about these things. All I know is once it kind of clicked and I was like, okay, here's a bunch of stuff here's a bunch of movies and games that I will not watch or play because they have these elements in there because I don't agree with them and I find them repulsive. And then I'm like, but this is not any better than that. And yet I seem to be okay watching that. So it's like, either I need to say, okay, I'm going to be of a divided mind. There's going to be hypocrisy here where I say, well, these things, because they don't appeal to me, are bad. And this, because it kind of appeals to me in some ways, is okay. Or I have to say, you know what? It's all good. There is really no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. It's all good. Why not? Or I have to say, well, no, the principle applies both ways. I'm not going to watch this either. And that's kind of mostly where I've landed. It doesn't mean like everything that has, I mean, Jack Reacher, that there's, intimacy in there as well. It's a very small part. There's a lot more to the show than that by leaps and bounds. So I'm like, okay, even then I've only watched it the one time, but anyway, like I said, no, I'm not, sorry, dry lips, apologize. Not a perfect person. Not trying to hold anybody up to a higher standard. I'm just going, there's been a lot of very subtle deception. I mean, like for example, not going down this road too much, but the idea of casual sex, when did that idea sprout up? When did humanity say, you know, this thing that is really, 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 really good at creating offspring because, you know, future of humanity and all that, this act that is part of the reproductive system, meaning that it exists for the sake of reproduction, that maybe using this reproductive system for casual sex where you don't really want a family. And in fact, if it leads to that, you just go, nip it in the bud. That's okay. That makes sense. Let's take something that is meant to create people and families, and let's make that casual. When did that happen? What genius came up with that idea? Don't know, but it's been in the movies, been in TV shows for a very, very long time. And that's how it gets introduced. It's very subtle. You introduce it a little bit. And the generation that's kind of gatekeeping some values and morality goes, hey, no, that's not cool. Prude, bigot, get off the stage, get out of here. We don't want you here. This is something we actually like. We like to see this stuff. We want to do this because it feels good. It feels good. So let us do this thing. Don't tell us we shouldn't do this. Who cares if it doesn't make sense? Who cares if it means, guys are irresponsible and just, hit and quit it and make it some kind of measure of a man? And who cares if women go, well, screw it. If he doesn't have to care, then I don't have to care. And you know what? This thing is inconvenient and out it goes. Who cares about all that? We want to enjoy these pleasures and have this gratification. That's the most important thing. And so it encroaches more and more into media. So now you get to the point where, as I was just saying, it's kind of hard to find a movie. I mean, you have Star Wars, not even Indiana Jones. Really hard to find a movie or series of movies where there isn't casual sex in there, where it isn't just, you look at it and go, okay, they're gonna totally do it. Well, he's a good looking guy. He's a leading man, and she's the leading lady, or she's the whatever. And so yeah, they're gonna sleep together. Why not? It's just kind of a given. It's just kind of like that. It's like screenwriting 101. You have these, leading action, rising action, climax, blah, blah, blah. And sleeping has to be in there somewhere. They gotta sleep together somewhere in there. It's just kind of like, take it for granted. But there was a point where that was very unnatural and where it was not pervasive. You had prostitution, you had sex and everything, but it wasn't glorified. It wasn't made to be like, this is what relationships are supposed to be like. And then from there, you got more and more things just going down the line of like, okay, once we've established that sex is important to have, it's important to show and to acknowledge that all characters have it. Well, now we need to have, all kinds of sex needs to be in there. And it's just, like I said, it just builds and builds and builds. But again, it's been very subtle. It's introduced with, it takes years. It takes like a decade to gain a little bit of ground because people are kind of going, there's a little bit of pushback, but you make it subtle and hey, these are fun characters. It's a great plot. It's a fun story. I laughed. Not really thinking about the casual sex. So that's how it gets introduced until the point where you get now where people are like, what do you mean no casual sex? That's a weird idea. Why wouldn't we have casual sex? It's like, I guarantee you for a long time, that was not a thing. Like you weren't having people on the prairie. You weren't having people all over the place. Like, again, there was promiscuity. Absolutely. But it was something you did in secret. It was something you were ashamed of. It was something that, was naughty. And so at least you had that barrier there of going, okay, society condemns this. If it's revealed, even though there are other people that do it, society as a whole is going, no, this is not what we aspire to. I'm going to feel like a turd muffin if I'm caught. So doesn't mean you're not going to do it, but I don't want to be caught doing it. Now it's like, it's a pride thing. Now it's like, hey, yeah, no, I slept with this many people. I do that. And especially it's been twisted now where women, the craziest thing, it's like women are giving men exactly what they want. Men are like, they're like, we're burning our bras. Men are like, okay, that's kind of cool. They're like, we're going to sleep around and show our sexual liberation. Guys are like, yeah, okay, we're cool with that too. Like it's just crazy how that whole movement, everything is played into. It's a debacle. And like I said, starts with, I honestly believe it does start with the guys. And that if you concede the ground, if you give it up, it will be taken over. And that is usurping of what I'll just call the natural order. And neither men nor women are at their best when their roles are inverted. I believe that when women feel unprotected, when they feel they need to protect or provide for themselves. And I don't mean, again, it's like a single mother, having to work or just a woman coming out of college. I need to provide for myself. Nothing wrong with that. But if you are in a place where there is supposed to be a provider and he's not providing, and the woman feels the need to do that, she's not in a good place. He's not in a good place. If he has forsaken that prerogative, he's broken in some way. And like, again, it's not, he's working a job and he's just not making a lot of money. That's different than not going to work at all, or, deadbeat kind of thing. Woman doesn't feel protected, doesn't feel provided for. She's going to take matters into her own hands. It's going to emasculate the guy, and it's going to make her feel resentful and fearful. It's not a good deal for either party. And I will stand on that. I again, not as a single person, but once you're in a relationship, when you invert the roles, not a good thing. Not to say that, guy goes to work, girl goes to work, that's fine. But when a guy forfeits it, when he's not doing it, when he's forsaken and stepped away from those prerogatives, and a woman does not feel protected or provided for, that's where crap things happen. Ahab and Jezebel, if you want to read that biblically, there's a very good illustration of that. Okay, so that's about it. I think I will have probably irked quite a few people. And hey, you know what? I don't ask or expect people to be nice or kind. I've seen the comment sections of many, many videos. You can be the nicest, make the nicest video, about kittens cuddling in a shoe, and you're going to get people getting on there and, bashing you to heck and calling you all kinds of names. It is the thing. So I'm not asking anybody to be extra kind, but I will say that it does foster an environment of learning and wanting to understand if it's presented in a nice way. Say, hey, because when I did the version video, I had several friends who clearly had very different opinions than I did about the matter and about the whole topic. But they were, again, because they were my friends, they were, saying, well, my experience has been this, and this is how I feel about that, and this is why I believe this, or how it worked for me. And I was like, okay, we don't agree, but I was able to absorb that perspective and go, okay, well, I don't get it, I guess, all right, it doesn't quite resonate with me, but and you ask questions, and so I understand you, I just don't necessarily agree with you, and you understand me and you don't agree with me, and that's okay. I can't expect you to agree with me any more than you expect me to agree with you, but maybe it will happen. But it doesn't happen if it's like just, you're a blah, blah, blah. Name calling just doesn't work, folks. Just like, you do yourself a favor and do everybody else a favor. Don't go with name calling, because it's not an authoritative thing. You calling somebody a name doesn't make them that name. They don't automatically feel bad about that. If they're like me and they've been called names forever and a day, they just go, okay, whatever. Like it's just like you saying, go blue, 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 blue. That's all I see. You call me a name, I just call it that. Make your point, make a case, say, hey, here's these things, and address the expression, address the concept, address, whatever it is, versus you are this or you are that, because it just doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't, if you're in theory, if you're going to spend the time to make a comment, I mean, if you just want to put somebody down, or you say, I want to express my disrespect or my animus towards you, well then, yeah, do whatever you want. But if you're like, hey, you're putting out this perspective and certain parts I get, and maybe you have a point, but I think you take it too far, or I think this is where the breakdown is, or, well, what about this situation? Or how do you feel about this? Or this is my experience and how it made me feel. Because then then maybe the next time I have a video or I'm talking about it, I'm like, but actually, I thought this way about this, but then somebody brought up this really good point. And I was like, well, you know what? That does seem to be, a very, very strong driving factor. I do know a lot of people that feel that way. So maybe, that changes this way, or, it benefits you because now your opinion's being heard, and it benefits me because I have a chance to learn from it. Whereas if you just come in there, blah, 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 you're this and you're that, and blah, 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 you just write it off, because even if there is a nugget of truth in there, who wants to dig through all the crap to get to a nugget when you can just throw the whole thing away, So yeah, so if you've gotten this far and you're holding yourself together and you're like, okay, I got some stuff to say, feel free to say it in the comment section. I look forward to it. I like discourse, and maybe even you've got some further ideas. Maybe you actually do agree with me on some of this, and you're like, well, yeah, and I also think these things are true, or what you said there, I take it even one step further. That's nice too. But yeah, that's the whole thing. Just wanted to kind of put that out there. And again, I feel like in a time where it's mask off, where we're seeing things, and I'm seeing people that don't necessarily, I don't think, have the same values as I do, core values, but they can see the facade. The facade is off. And they're going, that's an ugly face right there. Going, okay, yes, let's not let them put the mask back on. Let's dig this out and get down to the root of it and say, okay, wait a minute. Like, what have we allowed ourselves to believe? What have we accepted as a modern, enlightened society that maybe we shouldn't have? That maybe wasn't healthy. Maybe it wasn't right. Maybe it was a false step. Maybe it was a step in the right direction, but we took it too far. Maybe it's not a problem at all, but it does lead to these issues, and so we've got to be wary of that. I just, strike while the iron's hot is my perspective on it. So yeah, that's all I got. Thanks so much for watching, listening, for your time, and I'll talk to you later maybe. Okay.